My parents come first. Your mom has to leave. Lol. My husband said this to my mother out of the blue. Believe it or not, his parents had moved into our house without even asking. Okay, I'll go, my mother said sadly and left the house in tears. I'm Nancy, 30 years old, and I own a small cosmetics business. My husband Jimmy is also 30 and works as a hairstylist. We met through work and have been married for a year. Before getting married, I lived with my mother, who is chronically ill. She has been single since divorcing my dad. After dating Jimmy for a year and a half, we talked about marriage. I asked if we could live with my mom after getting married because I couldn't bear to leave her alone. At first, Jimmy didn't want to live with my mother because he thought it would be awkward. We couldn't agree on this, so we decided to meet each other's parents. When Jimmy came to my house and met my mother, he was surprised. This house is big and beautiful. It's big enough for several people, Jimmy said, admiring it, but he still didn't want to live there. So, I offered to pay all the living expenses if he agreed to live with us. He agreed to this. I also met his parents. Their house was old and worn out, but they were very kind to me. With our living situation settled, we got married. I make more money than Jimmy, and my friends noticed the difference in our incomes. But since he had a job and was independent, I didn't worry about the money. I liked his personality more. I'm usually a pessimist, but Jimmy's cheerful personality made me feel happy. I was glad to have him as my life partner. Jimmy, who is friendly and works as a hairstylist, quickly got along with my mother, so I thought living together would be easy. But I was wrong. After we got married, Jimmy started relying on me more and more for money. My mother didn't like this and often scolded him. Jimmy, are you borrowing money from Nancy again? I've never seen you pay it back, my mother would say. Jimmy, annoyed, would reply, I'll pay it back with my next paycheck. You said you borrowed money because you didn't have enough to go out drinking. But if you don't have money, you should stop going out, my mother argued. It's for work, so I can't avoid work-related outings, Jimmy replied. My mother wasn't convinced. Basically, you stay at home all day so you can't understand. Jimmy got annoyed. To ease the tension, I quickly said, I get why you want to go out with colleagues, so it's okay. Nancy, you're too soft on him, my mother said. He said the same thing last month and the month before. Has he paid you back? No, he hasn't paid me back. In the years since we got married, I've lent Jimmy several thousand, but he hasn't paid most of it back. Since he doesn't pay for living expenses, it's hard to believe he's out of money, I added. Then Jimmy said, living with your mother is really hard. She's so difficult. Since I have to deal with that, borrowing some money should be okay, right? You agreed to this by letting me cover the living expenses. I'm not lending you any more money. Please, I don't have much with my low salary, I replied. Even though I kept refusing, Jimmy kept asking for money until I eventually gave in. I knew this couldn't continue and tried to talk seriously with him, but he always dismissed it with a smile. Honestly, I'm thinking about divorce, I admitted. When we were dating, Jimmy often treated me to meals and gave me gifts. Now, even though it's only been a year since we got married, things have changed a lot. I hoped he would change, but that hope quickly faded. Jimmy quit his job at the salon without telling me and then got into debt from gambling. I'm sorry, I'll pay it back for sure. Can you cover my debt? He secretly asked me. But my sharp-witted mother noticed and joined in. Are you asking Nancy for money again? No, Jimmy looked uncomfortable, not wanting my mother to know. But I was really angry and told my mother everything. She exploded with anger. There's no way we're covering your debt. Get a new job and pay it off yourself. I'm in trouble because the repayment deadline is coming up. Can't you and Nancy cover it? Jimmy pleaded. I'm in trouble because the repayment deadline is approaching. Can't you and Nancy cover it? Don't be ridiculous. My mother was furious. Ever since living with you, MIL, it's been nothing but lecturing. I'm getting stressed out. You even criticize my appearance, saying it's not appropriate for a hairstylist. Jimmy was irritated. Are you saying this is my fault? I didn't gamble before we got married. I started going to casinos and horse races because I didn't want to come home. That's just an excuse. I'm borrowing money because Nancy said it's okay. It has nothing to do with you. Calm down, both of you. I tried to intervene, but it was in vain. It turned into a huge argument. From the next day, my husband and mother stopped hiding their disdain for each other and didn't speak to each other at all. A week later, on a weekend morning, people from a moving company suddenly arrived at our house. Ha! What's going on? I was stunned. They are here. Jimmy opened the door excitedly. Then a large number of boxes were brought into the house. What's happening? I asked Jimmy. At that moment, his parents showed up. Good morning. Why are you here so early? My mother was bewildered, standing with the people from the moving company and Jimmy's parents. My parents are moving in from today, Jimmy suddenly announced. What? What are you talking about? I had no idea about this, I said, astonished. Today is the moving day. I look forward to all of us living together, Jimmy said casually. It was unbelievable. My in-laws were moving in without permission. My parents come first. You, my MIL, need to leave. Lo, my husband told my mother. What is this? My mother was at a loss. This is my mother's house, you know, I said, and my husband looked surprised. Huh? He had assumed that since I run a company, I had bought the house, I realized. To really, my husband was fled. I said, since it's my mother's house, there's no way she should leave. I told him firmly. But they've already moved out of their house. What? Are you serious? I was stunned by his rashness. Did you think we would just allow them to move in unannounced? I asked. No, but the house is big and you have money, so what's the problem? I was infuriated by his flippant attitude. Enough already. You're unemployed, in debt, and now this? Absolutely not. Shut up. You should experience living with in-laws too. For the first time, my husband yelled at me with a terrifying face. I won't let them leave. I was intimidated, having never seen him like this. He used to be so kind. How did things get to this point? Did my request for him to live with us change him this much? No, it wasn't that. Maybe we shouldn't have gotten married in the first place. I was filled with despair at that moment. Fine, I'll leave, my mother spoke up. What? I was shocked. I'm sorry. It was wrong of me to ask my married daughter to live with me. My mother looked sad. I desperately tried to explain, but I was worried about you living alone with your illness. That's why I asked Jimmy to live with us. It's okay then, Jimmy and I will leave. You can stay here. It's fine. See? Your mother is okay with it, my husband said with a smirk. He was clearly thrilled about my mother leaving. My mother went to her room and started packing her suitcase. I'll come back for my things once I find a place. Mom, wait, I said frantically. Nancy, be nice to your in-laws. My mother quickly packed her things and headed to the front door. Goodbye, my husband said. Goodbye, my mother replied, tears streaming down her face. Mom, this house has been our home since before I was born. Are you really going to let it go over this? I tried to stop her. She looked down, wiping her tears with a tissue. Her shoulders were shaking as she couldn't stop crying. It's okay, I'll handle the house expenses, so don't worry. Goodbye, she said, her voice breaking and her eyes red. Watching her slender back as she left, I felt a deep anxiety. Yay, we got the house. My husband was triumphant. After my mother left, I couldn't believe his attitude. I quickly packed a suitcase with my essentials and decided to leave the house too. You're leaving just because my parents moved in. My husband called after me, but I ignored him and walked out. After that, I stayed in the same hotel as my mother and commuted to work from there. I had brought with me 5 days' worth of suits, but I was missing many things since I left in a hurry, so I bought what I needed. A month flew by as I was busy with work. One day, I took a day off during the week and went to our old home with my mother. We unlocked the door and entered the house. In the living room, we found my husband, his parents, and another woman. Nancy and mother. My husband stammered, surprised by our sudden arrival. The house was cluttered and messy compared to before. As usual, Jimmy and his parents were working and were living comfortably. MIL, you look different. Jimmy noticed the change in my mother, who used to be in her room, dressed in clothes without makeup. Now, she was dressed up with full makeup and wearing high-end brand clothes and jewelry. The first thing my mother said was, I've sold this house and the land. You need to move out. Move out? What are you talking about? Jimmy and his parents were shocked. The movers will be here soon. They'll pack my furniture, appliances, and belongings. They'll also pack your things. You need to leave within a week. Wait, what is going on? My husband was floored. I own this house and the land. I've let you stay here rent-free for over a month, so you should be grateful, my mother said firmly. No way. We're not leaving. My husband strongly resisted. In a week, this house and land will belong to someone else. If you're still here, then you'll be trespassing, and the police will get involved. Is that what you want? My mother had planned to sell the house and land for some time. The house was too big and hard to manage, so she was considering moving to a smaller, more manageable place. When Jimmy's parents moved in, she seized it as an opportunity to get back at Jimmy for causing me so much pain. Jimmy was stunned when he learned this. So when you were crying as you left the house? Oh, those tears were because I was trying so hard not to laugh at your triumphant face. I was acting. Didn't you think I was good? My mother said, laughing. Ma'am, it's time, her secretary informed her. Ma'am? My husband was stunned. You didn't know? I'm a consultant for the cosmetics company. When he heard the company name, my husband was shocked. Wait, that huge company? I thought you were unemployed. Well, I am at home a lot because of my chronic illness, so I left the company to Nancy's brother. Nancy is the president of our subsidiary. I didn't know any of this. Seems my daughter didn't trust you enough to tell you. Anyway, I'm leaving now. Make sure you move out by the deadline. With that, my mother left the house gracefully with her secretary. Nancy, why didn't you tell me? My husband immediately asked. I thought it would make living together even more difficult. Besides, I was worried you might try to borrow money from her too. Hearing my reason, my husband smirked. So, it turns out you have more wealth than I thought. The new place must be nice too, right? We'll move there too. That's not happening. I'm here to discuss our divorce. What? Divorce? My husband looked incredulous. And this woman sitting casually on the sofa, she's your mistress, isn't she? I said, looking at the woman who lowered her face uncomfortably. No, it's a misunderstanding. She's just an acquaintance, nothing more. My husband defended himself. This is the proof. I laid out photos on the table showing evidence of his affair. I had been suspicious of his infidelity for some time and hired a private investigator. The countless borrowing of money and gambling were likely spent on this woman too. When did you take these? The photos showed him entering a hotel with the mistress. I'll be demanding alimony. Realizing he couldn't hide anymore, my husband apologized. I'm sorry, I'll break it off with her. The divorce isn't just because of the affair. You don't work and you've racked up debt. I kept hoping you'd change, but I can't wait any longer. Hearing this, my husband countered, but you earn enough, so it would have been fine if I stayed home as a house husband, right? Why should I support a house husband who also cheats and racks up debt? I used to work, but since you kept lending me money, I lost the motivation. So it's my fault you stopped working. Then it's even clearer we should divorce. Seeing my resolve, my husband conceded, okay, let's divorce. I'll pay the alimony. I called the lawyer who had been waiting outside. We drafted a legal document regarding alimony, and my husband signed the divorce papers. I have prepared the lawyer to draft the documents, but I'm still entitled to half of your assets. We've been married for a year, so I should get half your annual income, he said, as if it were a matter of course. But it wasn't going to be that easy. We had a prenuptial agreement stating that there would be no division of assets in the event of a divorce. Remember what, Jimmy? You agreed to the prenup, didn't you? No, he finally remembered. It was agreed that there would be no division of assets if we divorced within 2 years. Yeah, I agreed, but I didn't expect this. Jimmy looked pale. At the time, you didn't imagine we'd separate, so you agreed to it without much thought. So if we divorce, you don't get a cent. You'll be only paying alimony. Hearing this, Jimmy hung his head. At that moment, the movers arrived, and I began directing them to pack. Wait a minute. What's this about being unemployed and in debt? You said you were a company president. Jimmy's mistress, who had kept quiet until now, shouted loud enough for the whole house to hear. Sorry, I was originally a hairstylist. I'm unemployed now, but I plan to find a new job soon. Apparently, Jimmy had lied about his job to his mistress. I'm breaking up with you, she shouted and immediately left the house. The movers finished packing my mother's and my belongings, then started packing Jimmy's and his parents' things. His parents were in shock at this sudden eviction. Later, I went to the local government office and filed for divorce. Our marriage lasted only a year. After we separated, Jimmy desperately searched for a new job but couldn't find one with conditions as good as his previous job, so he struggled to find employment. With alimony payments and debts, Jimmy and his unemployed parents ended up homeless. They eventually found part-time jobs and managed to rent a rundown apartment. My mother and I moved to a new place. It's a modest home but surrounded by nature and very comfortable. I have no lingering feelings for Jimmy, and I'm not considering remarriage right now. My work as a company president is fulfilling, and I'm living happily with my mother.
I stared at Tom's back as he walked away, his sister Nancy trailing behind him like a obedient lapdog. Maggie, taking care of your mother-in-law is your job while we're gone. Don't mess it up, he tossed over his shoulder without even a glance in my direction. As the front door slammed shut, I let out a long breath, my shoulders sagging. 4 weeks alone with Caroline, Tom's bedridden, mute mother. The same woman who had treated me with thinly veiled disdain from the moment I'd married her son 5 years ago. I trudged up the stairs to Caroline's room, dreading the next month. She lay motionless on the bed, her pale, wrinkled face expressionless as always. Well, Caroline, looks like it's just you and me, I muttered, receiving no response. The first week passed in a blur of monotony. I fed Caroline, bathed her, changed her bedding, all while she stared blankly ahead, never uttering a sound. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the old house settling. On the 8th day, something shifted. As I leaned over to adjust Caroline's pillows, her bony hand shot out, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. I gasped, meeting her piercing blue eyes for the first time. Enough of this charade, Maggie, she rasped, her voice rough from disuse. We have work to do. I could only gape at her, my mind reeling. Caroline pushed herself upright, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. But how? You've been... Pretending, she finished, a wry smile tugging at her lips, playing the helpless old woman to avoid dealing with my wretched family. As she began to explain, revealing a web of deceit and cruelty I'd never imagined, a fierce determination took root within me. Tom's betrayal ran deeper than I'd ever known, but now with Caroline's help, I would unravel every last secret. The game was on. As Caroline's revelations sank in, a wave of emotions crashed over me. Shock, anger, betrayal. I had always known Tom's family was a little off, but this was a whole new level of depravity. How could you let them treat you like that? I demanded, my voice shaking with fury. You're their mother, their own flesh and blood. Caroline's expression hardened. At first, I tried to fight back, but they slowly stripped me of everything. My money, my power, even my dignity. By the time I realized the truth, it was too late. Her eyes bored into mine, icy and resolute. That's why we have to stop them, Maggie, before they do the same to you. A shiver ran down my spine at her ominous words. Was that Tom's plan all along? To isolate me, make me dependent on him and his vile family? The thought made me sick. Start from the beginning, I urged Caroline. I need to know everything. And so she told me a sordid tale of greed, manipulation, and outright cruelty that made my blood boil. How her late husband's inheritance had sparked a vicious power struggle within the family. How Tom and Nancy had slowly turned against her, stripping her assets and forcing her into a life of subservience, all under the guise of caring for their poor, helpless mother. By the time Caroline finished, hot tears of rage stung my eyes. Those bastards, I spat, using their own mother like that. A gnarled hand gripped mine, startling me. That's why we have to fight back, Caroline stated, her voice laced with steel. They won't see it coming. A plan began to form, pieces slotting into place like a twisted puzzle. We would follow Tom and his wretched family to Maui, catch them in the act of whatever new scheme they were hatching. And when we did, justice would be ours. Over the next few days, Caroline and I hatched our plan. She knew someone who could help us, an old friend named Mark who used to work as a private investigator. Are you sure we can trust him? I asked warily as Caroline dialed the number. She shot me a reassuring look. Mark's one of the few decent people left in this world. He'll help us bring those snakes down. The phone call was brief, but by the time Caroline hung up, a sly grin had crept across her weathered features. He's in. Said he's been itching for some juicy drama to sink his teeth into. A surprising burst of laughter escaped my lips. Who would have thought sweet demure Maggie Owens would be plotting an elaborate revenge scheme? If Tom could see me now... The thought of my treacherous husband sobered me instantly. Caroline must have noticed my change in demeanor, because she reached out and gave my hand a comforting squeeze. I know it hurts, dear. Believe me, I understand the pain of having your own family betray you. Her eyes hardened. But that's exactly why we have to do this, to show them we're not just a couple of helpless old ladies to be manipulated and cast aside. Her words lit a fire in my belly. She was right. For too long, I had meekly accepted the crumbs Tom and his vicious brood deigned to toss my way. But not anymore. This time, we would be the ones calling the shots. Mark arrived 2 days later, a rumpled but kind-looking man in his 40s. As Caroline introduced us, I studied him carefully, looking for any signs of dishonesty or ulterior motives, but his warm brown eyes crinkled with genuine compassion as he shook my hand. "Don't you worry, Maggie," he said in a gentle southern drawl. "We're going to nail those lying snakes, but good." And so we got to work, poring over flight manifests and hotel reservations, mapping out every step of Tom's upcoming trip to Maui. With each detail we uncovered, my resolve solidified like steel. Finally, the day arrived. As I stood in the kitchen watching the black Suburban pull away, Tom's stupid smug face visible through the tinted windows, I felt a surge of vicious satisfaction. Let him enjoy this little vacation. It would be his last taste of freedom before everything came crashing down around him. I turned to find Caroline and Mark watching me, twin expressions of grim determination etched on their faces. Time to go hunting. With Tom and his family now en route to Maui, the real work began. Mark sprang into action, a whirlwind of phone calls and computer searches as he dug up every scrap of intel on their targets. "This Tom fella sure loves his luxury resorts," he muttered, scribbling notes on a legal pad. "But we can use that against him." Caroline and I huddled close, watching with bated breath as Mark cross-referenced hotel listings and flight schedules. Finally, he circled something with a triumphant flourish. "Got it! They're staying at the Grand Wailea Resort. Pricey place, but that means more staff to bribe for information." He shot us a conspiratorial wink. A sly grin tugged at Caroline's lips. "Excellent work, Mark. Now about getting us over there discreetly." By the time Tom's sniveling voice crackled over the answering machine with some half-baked excuse about needing to extend their stay, we were ready. Fake identities, meticulously forged documents, Mark had covered every base with the same care as a master artist crafting his next masterpiece. The morning we left, I stood in the driveway, squinting against the harsh Arizona sun as I drank in the sight of my quaint little house. Once upon a time, it had represented everything I'd ever wanted: a loving home, a caring husband, maybe even children someday. Now it was just another empty facade, a monument to the lies my life had become. Tossing my suitcase into the trunk with a decisive thunk, I slid into the back seat beside Caroline. Her face was set in stony determination, any traces of frailty or fear utterly banished. This was a woman who had stared into the depths of betrayal and emerged emboldened, ready to face any challenge head-on. As Mark peeled out of the driveway, I twisted in my seat for one last glimpse of the house rapidly disappearing behind us. A strange sense of finality washed over me, as if I were shedding an old, tarnished skin and being reborn into something new, something stronger, uncompromising, unafraid. This time, there would be no more lies, no more hiding in the shadows while others schemed and plotted in the light. This time, the snakes would get their just desserts. Maui was every bit as beautiful as the glossy travel brochures promised. Sun-drenched beaches, swaying palms, and crystal-clear waters that seemed to beckon weary souls. Too bad we weren't there for a vacation. Mark had booked us a modest room at a different resort, far enough away to avoid any accidental run-ins with Tom's crew. Not that they'd recognize us anyway, thanks to his meticulously crafted fake identities. "First order of business," he said, tossing a stack of crisp bills on the rickety table, "is getting eyes and ears inside the Grand Wailea." Caroline's eyes glinted with determination. "Leave that to me, dear. I have a few tricks left up my sleeve." True to her word, within 48 hours, she'd made some very lucrative friends among the resort staff. A maid, a bartender, even the concierge. All it took was flashing a little cash, and they were more than happy to keep their eyes peeled for any suspicious behavior from the Owens family. The first report came 3 days later, delivered in a hushed voice over burner phones like we were deep undercover spies. Becca, the maid, had spotted Tom getting awfully cozy with a pretty young blonde by the adult pool, hand-holding, whispered endearments, the works. White-hot rage lanced through me at the mental image. So not only was the bastard cheating, he was bold enough to do it right under his family's noses? I fought the urge to hurl the phone across the room as Caroline flashed me a sympathetic look. "There's more," Becca continued in a trembling voice. "I overheard Nancy and that trollop Becca talking about some kind of plan to cut you out, Maggie, make it look like you just up and left Tom high and dry so they could take the house." The room seemed to spin around me as the weight of her words sank in. So that's what this whole sick charade had been about, robbing me of everything I had left, leaving me destitute and alone. Tears of fury stung my eyes as Caroline reached out to grip my arm, steadying me. "Breathe. Maggie," she murmured. "We've got them right where we want them." Taking a shuddering breath, I forced myself to nod. Caroline was right. Panicking now would only play right into their hands. We had to stay focused, gather every last shred of evidence to crush them utterly. Over the next few days, the calls kept coming. Sordid details of Tom's affair, overheard conversations about their insidious plot to steal my home and inheritance. With each new revelation, the white-hot anger burning in my chest flared brighter, becoming an inferno of righteous indignation that threatened to consume me. Finally, the night before we were scheduled to strike, Mark gathered us around the cheap motel table with a grim look. "We've got everything we need to bury those snakes," he stated, his deep voice laced with conviction. "Photos, recordings, the whole 9 yards. They won't be able to talk their way out of this one." Caroline reached across the table, grasping my hand in a vice-like grip. "Are you ready, dear? Once we start down this road, there's no turning back." Meeting her blazing gaze, I felt something shift deep inside, a sense of unshakable purpose, of being in the dead calm eye of the storm before all hell broke loose. This was it, the moment everything changed. "Let's do this," I said, the words ringing with a cold finality. Tomorrow, the Owens family would reap what they'd sown, and this time, I'd be the one dealing the blows. The next evening, showtime arrived. Mark had managed to score us a reservation at Ferraro's, one of the ritziest restaurants at the Grand Wailea, the perfect place to spring our trap. As the valet whisked our rental car away, I smoothed my hands over the slinky black dress Caroline had insisted I wear. "You want them squirming, dear," she'd said with a wicked glint in her eye. "Give them something to look at." The maitre d' led us through the opulent dining room, weaving between tables filled with vacationing millionaires obliviously enjoying their overpriced meals. My heart was pounding a staccato rhythm in my chest as we approached our destination, a semi-secluded alcove near the back, perfectly positioned for our little encounter. They were already there. Tom, resplendent in a tailored linen suit that probably cost more than my car. Nancy, draped in gaudy jewels befitting a faded aristocrat. And beside them, the pretty young blonde I recognized from the photos, Becca, Tom's latest conquest. I felt Caroline tense beside me as we approached, no doubt fighting the urge to rush forward and unleash decades of pent-up fury. Mark's reassuring hand on my elbow was the only thing keeping me grounded. Tom was the first to notice us, his brow furrowing in confusion that quickly morphed into ill-concealed panic. "And Maggie? What are you doing here?" Well, if it isn't the happy family," I drawled, surprised by the biting sarcasm dripping from my words. "Enjoying your vacation, Tom?" He opened and closed his mouth like a gasping fish, shooting panicked glances between me and the oblivious Becca. Nancy, never one to be upstaged, puffed out her bony chest in a pitiful attempt at bravado. "And just what is the meaning of this, Maggie?" she snapped, lips curling into a condescending sneer. "Barging in on our family holiday, putting on such a shameful display. Can it, Nancy?" The words sliced through her tirade like a hot knife through butter. We both know this is no family vacation. With a deft flick of my wrist, I spread the damning photos across the crisp linen tablecloth. Tom draped all over Becca by the pool, whispering into her ear, his face drained of color as his mistress's pretty features contorted in shock and revulsion. You've been watching us?" he choked out, hands trembling. A cruel smile twisted my lips. "Among other things, care to explain to your little friend here about your plan to steal my home, my inheritance?" Becca's head whipped around, eyes wide with a mixture of horror and bewildered hurt. "Tom, what is she talking about?" The question seemed to catalyze something within him. Suddenly he was on his feet, fists clenched, a vein pulsing angrily in his forehead. "You stupid little he snarled, seemingly forgetting we were surrounded by gawking onlookers. That's when Caroline made her move. With a spryness that belied her age, she shot out of her seat and seized him by the lapels, slamming him back into his chair with a surprising burst of strength. "Not another word out of you," she hissed, her face a mask of pure venom as she loomed over her cowering son. "You've tormented me for the last time." Tom's eyes bulged in shock and terror as he finally registered the woman restraining him, the same helpless old crone he'd been belittling and demeaning for years. "Mom? But how?" The sickly sweet smile she turned on him then was somehow more chilling than any glare. "What's the matter, Tommy? You look like you've seen a ghost." The shocked silence that fell over our secluded alcove was deafening. Tom stared up at his mother in abject horror, as if she'd grown a second head right before his eyes. Nancy looked equally stunned, her bravado evaporating like smoke. "But you were bedridden," Tom finally sputtered, grasping at straws. "We took care of you, Mother, after Dad died and left everything in shambles." "Don't you dare play the victim with me, Thomas Owens." Caroline spat, her frail body practically vibrating with pent-up rage. "Not after what you and your wretched sister did to me." Her piercing gaze swung to Nancy, who shrank back in her chair. "Stripping me of my assets, my dignity, my very identity, all for that blasted inheritance. Did you really think I wouldn't eventually catch on to your game?" It was like a dam had burst. Years of deception, manipulation, and suffering came pouring out in a torrent of recriminations. Caroline laid it all bare. The vicious power struggle that erupted after her husband's death, the slow erosion of her autonomy at the hands of her own children, the utter disregard they'd shown her as a human being. "We did what was best for the family," Nancy attempted feebly, but her protests were swiftly silenced by a withering glare. "Best for the family?" Caroline laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Or best for your own greed? I may be old, but I'm not senile. I know exactly what you two vipers were planning here in Maui." She jerked her chin toward the still scattered photos, Tom and Becca's indiscretions laid bare for all to see. Using this little tramp to cuckold Maggie, make her look unhinged so you could steal her home out from under her, just like you did to me. Becca made a small, pained noise in the back of her throat, tears welling in her wide eyes. Tom reached out a placating hand, but she flinched away, revulsion etched across her delicate features. Is that true?" She turned to me, anguish and betrayal writ large. "Were you just using me to take everything from your wife?" The lost, broken look on Tom's face would have almost been comical if the situation weren't so twisted. His mouth worked soundlessly as he floundered for an excuse, any lie to salvage what was left of his pathetic charade. In the end, he simply slumped back in his chair, a puppet with its strings cut, defeated. Nancy, however, wasn't quite ready to surrender. Rounding on me with bared teeth, she hissed, "You little bitch. After everything we've done for you, putting a roof over your head, clothes on your back." "That's enough." The words sliced through Nancy's vitriol like a blade, cold and utterly devoid of mercy. Straightening to my full height, I met her hateful glare with an icy one of my own. "Your lies and manipulations end here," I stated, each word ringing with finality. "The Maggie you knew, the sweet, naive little doormat, is gone. Don't like it?" I gestured to the surrounding diners, gawking in scandalized fascination. "Too bad. The whole world can see you for what you really are now." A muscle twitched in Nancy's jaw, but she seemed to realize the futility of arguing. Slowly, almost grudgingly, she sank back into her seat in sullen defeat. As I surveyed the shattered remains of the Owens clan, a strange sense of lightness washed over me, as if a crushing weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders after all this time. The anger, the hurt, the years of rage and resentment, it all seemed to melt away in that moment, leaving only a hollow sort of pity in its wake. These were just sad, small people obsessed with wealth and status, to the point of self-destruction. By trying to control me, they'd ultimately lost everything, their money, their standing, even each other. And in the end, their defeat was entirely of their own making. The flight back from Maui was a blur. Caroline and I huddled together in the emergency exit row, sipping tiny bottles of bourbon and relishing the silence. For once, there were no snakes waiting to strike from the shadows, just the promise of a new beginning. Mark had already made arrangements to handle the legal ramifications of Tom's exposed misdeeds. With his connections and the wealth of evidence we'd gathered, he assured us that the appropriate authorities would be brought into the loop to address any potential criminal charges. As for me, I simply didn't have the energy to even think about pressing charges or going through a lengthy legal battle. I just wanted to move on. The first thing I did when we returned to Arizona was put the house on the market. It didn't take long to find a buyer. Tom's family had done me the favor of selecting a home in a prime neighborhood. As I signed the final paperwork that transferred ownership, I felt an unexpected pang of sadness watching the new owner's excited expressions. Try not to make the same mistakes I did, I couldn't help but murmur as I handed over the keys. With the house settled, it was time to decide my next steps. Caroline and I spent an evening camped out at a local diner, poring over maps and apartment listings as we tried to figure out our new path. "I was thinking somewhere new," she said, tracing her finger over the map. "A fresh start, away from all these bad memories." I nodded slowly. As much as I'd once loved the idea of settling down in the suburbs, raising a family of my own, that dream felt tainted now, irrevocably tarnished by Tom's betrayal and the upheaval that followed. Maybe it was for the best to leave it all behind, to forge ahead into the unknown. "I'm open to it," I agreed. "Any preferences?" Caroline's eyes took on a distant look as she studied the map. "You know, I've always wanted to see New England in the fall. The changing leaves, the crisp air." She let out a contented sigh. "It seems like it would be a lovely place to plant some new roots." I couldn't help but smile at the image she painted, the two of us surrounded by vibrant autumn splendor, finally at peace after the turmoil we'd endured. A chance to reinvent ourselves in a place where the Owens name meant nothing. New England it is, then. In the weeks that followed, we began making preparations for our new life, selling or donating what little we had left in Arizona, researching potential towns and job prospects in the Northeast. With each day that passed, it became easier to shed the weight of the past and look ahead with a sense of renewal. On the morning we were set to depart, I took one last walk through the empty house. Upstairs, I peeked into the room that had once been mine and Caroline's command center, covered in maps and photographs detailing every minute of our revenge plot. So much had happened within these walls, so much hurt and anger, yes, but also a reckoning long overdue. A bittersweet smile tugged at my lips as I turned away. The past was the past, the slithering shadows forever banished. Whatever lay ahead in New England was still a mystery, but this time I vowed to march forward with open eyes and a fearless heart. After all, we had already faced down the worst the Owens family could throw at us. From here, the path could only lead forward. As I made my way down the stairs one final time, I felt lighter than I had in years, free of the burdens that once weighed me down. Out in the hallway, Caroline was waiting with an expectant look. "Ready, dear?" she asked, a warm, conspiratorial smile curving her lips. Returning her smile, I gave a decisive nod. We had made it through the shadows. Now it was time to embrace the light. "How could you, Carson? Just days from our anniversary?" I glanced at the crumpled love letter in my hand, bile rising in my throat. The words blurred as tears stung my eyes. Carson's face paled. "Margot, please let me explain." "Explain what?" I spat. "That you've been having an affair behind my back? With whom?" My mind raced, trying to make sense of the betrayal. He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "It was a moment of weakness, a mistake. It didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" I echoed, my voice trembling with rage. "Then what is this?" I waved the damning letter in his face. Carson flinched, his eyes downcast. "I'm sorry, Margot, truly, but we can't tell my mother. Not now. You know how fragile her health is." His mother, Faye, the woman who had embraced me as her own daughter when Carson and I married 5 years ago. A pang of guilt twisted in my gut, but it was quickly overshadowed by the bitter taste of betrayal. "So, you expect me to just pretend everything is fine?" I asked, incredulous. "To lie to her, to everyone, while you carry on with your affair?" Carson stepped closer, his hands outstretched in a placating gesture. "It's over, I swear. It was a foolish mistake that won't happen again. But if we tell her now, so close to our anniversary, it could devastate her. Please, Margot, for her sake, let's keep this between us for now. I searched his eyes, desperate for any glimmer of truth, any sign that the man I loved was still in there. But all I saw was a stranger, a coward willing to sacrifice my trust for his own selfish reasons. Clenching my jaw, I nodded curtly. Fine, we'll keep up appearances for now, but mark my words, Carson, this isn't over. You've shattered my trust, and I won't forget that. Relief washed over his features, but I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow ache in my chest. As he reached out to embrace me, I recoiled, my body rigid with resentment. In that moment, a seed of determination took root within me. I would play along, bide my time, and when the opportunity presented itself, I would unleash the full force of my fury. Carson's betrayal would not go unanswered, and he would soon learn the true cost of his deceit. With a steely resolve, I turned away, already plotting my revenge. The anniversary celebration would be a mere charade, a calm before the storm I intended to unleash upon our fractured family. Margot, I don't trust her taking care of you, Carson murmured as he caressed my swollen belly. But there's no one else. I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. I'll be fine, Carson. It's just for a few days while you're away on business. His brow furrowed with concern, but he nodded reluctantly. All right, but promise me you'll call if she gives you any trouble. As if on cue, the doorbell rang, and Faye's familiar silhouette appeared through the frosted glass. I plastered on a smile, determined not to let her see my apprehension. Margot, darling! Faye enveloped me in a suffocating embrace, her saccharine tone already grating on my nerves. How are my beautiful grandchildren treating you? We're doing well, Faye, I replied, extricating myself from her grip. Thank you for offering to help while Carson is away. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, but the smile remained fixed in place. Of course, dear. What are mothers-in-law for? Carson cleared his throat, shooting me a pointed look before turning to his mother. I'll be back in a few days. Take good care of her, Mom. Don't you worry about a thing, Faye cooed, patting his arm reassuringly. Margot and the babies will be in excellent hands. As Carson departed, I couldn't shake the sense of dread that settled in the pit of my stomach. Faye's kindly demeanor was already beginning to fray, revealing glimpses of the true nature I had witnessed during her tirades against me. The first few hours passed without incident, but as the day wore on, Faye's criticisms grew more frequent and cutting. Margot, dear, are you sure you should be eating that? She clucked disapprovingly as I reached for a snack. You wouldn't want to put on too much weight, would you? I bit my tongue, reminding myself that confrontation would only escalate the situation. Later, as I attempted to tidy up the living room, Faye sked loudly. Honestly, Margot, is this how you keep house? No wonder Carson is always so stressed. The barbs continued, each one chipping away at my resolve. By evening, I was utterly exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The next morning, Faye's true colors emerged in full force. Up and at 'em, Margot, she trilled, throwing open the curtains to let in the harsh morning light. There's so much to be done around here. Before I could protest, she thrust a list of chores into my hands, a veritable marathon of tasks that would have been daunting for someone without the added strain of a twin pregnancy. But Faye, I'm not sure I should be doing all of this, I ventured cautiously. The doctor said I need to take it easy. Her eyes flashed with barely concealed contempt. Nonsense. A little hard work never hurt anyone. Now get moving, or do you want my grandchildren to grow up in a pigsty? Cowed by her forceful tone, I reluctantly began tackling the list, my back and feet aching with every task. Faye hovered nearby, offering a steady stream of criticism and barbed comments that left me feeling utterly demoralized. By the time Carson returned home, I was a physical and emotional wreck, my body racked with pain and my spirit crushed by Faye's relentless onslaught. As he took in my haggard appearance, concern etched deep lines across his brow. Margot, what happened? Are you all right? Before I could respond, Faye swooped in, her saccharine mask firmly in place. She's just been overdoing it, that's all. You know how nesting can be for expectant mothers. I opened my mouth to protest, to reveal the truth about her abusive behavior, but one withering glance from Faye silenced me. In that moment, I realized that confronting her directly would only lead to further anguish. No, I would bide my time, gather my strength, and when the opportunity presented itself, I would unleash the full force of my fury upon Faye and Carson both. Their betrayals would not go unanswered, and they would soon learn the true cost of underestimating my resilience. "You're just like your mother, worthless," Faye hissed, her words cutting through the silence like a knife. "I don't take orders from a failure." My heart sank as her cruel words echoed in the empty house. Memories of my late mother's gentle smile and unwavering love flooded my mind, a stark contrast to the venom spewing from Faye's lips. "How dare you speak about her like that?" I managed, my voice trembling with a mixture of grief and rage. Faye's lips curled into a contemptuous sneer. "What? You think you're better than me? Than this family? You're nothing but a leech, leeching off my son's success." I recoiled as if struck, her words cutting deeper than any physical blow. Was this truly how she saw me, after all these years of trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law? "I've given everything to this family," I protested, my hands instinctively cradling my swollen belly. "These are Carson's children I'm carrying." Faye's gaze dropped to my midsection, her expression twisting into one of disdain. "Don't flatter yourself. Once those brats are born, you're out of the picture, I'll make sure of it." A chill ran down my spine as the full weight of her threat sank in. She meant to take my children from me, to sever the bond between a mother and her newborns. The thought was utterly unthinkable. Yet I knew in that moment that Faye was capable of any cruelty imaginable. "You're a monster," I whispered, hot tears stinging my eyes. Faye's laughter was cold, devoid of any warmth or humor. "I'm a realist, dear, and the reality is you're not fit to be a mother, not to my grandchildren." In that instant, something shifted within me. The fear and grief that had paralyzed me moments before gave way to a burning determination. I would not allow this bitter, twisted woman to dictate the course of my life or my family's future. Squaring my shoulders, I met Faye's icy glare with a steely resolve of my own. "You're wrong, Faye. I am a mother, and I will fight with every breath in my body to protect my children from your poisonous influence." Her eyes narrowed dangerously, but I held my ground, emboldened by the knowledge that I was fighting for something far greater than myself. "We'll see about that," she spat, turning on her heel and storming from the room. As her footsteps faded, I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. With shaking fingers, I typed out a message to Carson, pleading for his help, his intervention. But even as I hit send, a part of me knew that this battle could not be won through his involvement alone. Faye's hatred ran too deep, her grip on our family too tight. No, if I wanted to truly free myself and my children from her toxic grasp, I would need to take matters into my own hands. And as I felt the tiny flutters of life within me, I knew that I would stop at nothing to ensure their safety and happiness. The war had begun, and I would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. "You think you're special because you're carrying his babies? Once they're born, you're out." Faye's words cut deeper than any knife, slicing through the fragile peace I had managed to maintain. I clutched my swollen belly protectively, as if shielding my unborn children from the venom dripping from her tongue. "What are you saying, Faye?" Her lips twisted into a cruel smirk. "Exactly what you think, dear. Once those brats are out of you, I'll make sure they stay right where they belong, with their real family." A chill ran down my spine as the full weight of her threat sank in. She meant to take my children from me, to sever the sacred bond between mother and child before it could even form. "You're insane," I breathed, my voice trembling with a potent mixture of fear and rage. "They're my babies, Faye. You can't just take them away." Faye's laughter was cold, devoid of any warmth or humor. "Watch me. You're nothing but an incubator, Margot, a means to an end. Once you've served your purpose, you'll be discarded like the worthless trash you are." Bile rose in my throat as I fought the urge to lash out, to claw and scratch until this vile woman understood the depth of my fury. But I knew such actions would only give her more ammunition, more justification for her twisted schemes. Instead, I forced myself to remain calm, to meet her icy glare with a steely resolve of my own. "I won't let you do this, Faye. These are my children, and I will fight with every breath in my body to protect them from your poisonous influence." Her eyes narrowed dangerously, but I held my ground, emboldened by the knowledge that I was fighting for something far greater than myself. "We'll see about that," she spat, turning on her heel and storming from the room. As her footsteps faded, I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling as I fought back tears of rage and despair. How could I have been so blind, so naive to the true depths of Faye's depravity? But even as doubt crept in, a newfound determination took root within me. I would not allow this bitter, twisted woman to dictate the course of my life or my family's future. Not anymore. With shaking fingers, I reached for my phone, opening the camera app and beginning to document the evidence of Faye's abuse. The cutting remarks, the emotional manipulation, the thinly veiled threats. Every cruel word, every caustic glance captured and preserved for the day when I would finally strike back. As the days passed, the collection grew, a damning testament to the true nature of the woman I had once foolishly called family. And with each new entry, my resolve hardened, my desire for retribution burning brighter than ever before. I would not be cowed, not be silenced or pushed aside like some inconvenient obstacle. I was a mother, a force of nature, and I would stop at nothing to ensure the safety and happiness of my children. The war had begun, and I would emerge victorious no matter the cost. Faye, step back, I've heard everything. Carson's voice roared as he burst through the door, his eyes blazing with fury. You have no right to threaten my wife. Faye's menacing glare faltered as Carson wrapped a protective arm around my shoulders, pulling me close to his chest. I clutched the damning evidence against Faye, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. I should have known better than to trust a manipulative snake like you, Carson spat, his words dripping with venom as he glared at his mother. Faye's jaw clenched, her eyes narrowing into slits of rage. How dare you speak to me that way after everything I've sacrificed for this family? As Faye's vicious tongue unleashed on Carson, I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger towards her for the emotional torment she had inflicted on me. Her cruel taunts and empty threats had left me questioning my self-worth as a woman, as a mother. Just as I was about to unleash my bottled-up rage, the doorbell rang, breaking the tension. As I opened the door, my heart sank as I saw the sympathetic gaze of our dear friend, who had been a shoulder to lean on during my darkest moments. Faye, you have no right to make threats against my wife, she said, her voice laced with anger. She is carrying my grandchildren, and I will not have you terrorize her any longer. Faye's menacing glare softened as she realized the gravity of her actions and the consequences it could bring. As she begrudgingly let go of her bitterness, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief, knowing that her toxic influence would no longer affect our family. However, as Faye's demeanor changed, so did her perception of me. She realized that I was not the weak, helpless woman she had initially thought, but rather a strong, resilient individual who could stand up to her manipulative ways. As Faye begrudgingly accepted my strength, I felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that I had the ability to confront her and break free from her emotional hold. In that moment, I realized that Faye's actions were a reflection of her own insecurities and fears, rather than a personal attack against me. Her cruel words and empty threats were a desperate attempt to maintain control and assert her dominance. As I confronted Faye's fears, I felt a sense of pity for her, rather than anger. Her actions were a cry for attention and validation, which she sought through emotional manipulation. Ultimately, Faye's threats were a test of my resilience and strength of character. By standing firm in the face of her intimidation tactics, I proved that I was not easily swayed by her empty promises or hollow threats. In the end, Faye's actions only served to strengthen my resolve and determination to be a better person, a better mother, and a better daughter-in-law. This affair ends now, Carson. My voice rang out, clear and unwavering, as I threw the crumpled love letters onto the dining table before the astonished faces of our family. You won't control me anymore. Carson's eyes widened in shock, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Beside him, Faye's expression contorted into a mask of rage, her hands clenching into tight fists. How dare you bring this filth into my home, she hissed, her gaze boring into me with a hatred I had never seen before. I met her glare with a steely resolve, emboldened by the knowledge that the truth was finally out in the open. Your home? This is my home too, Faye. Or have you forgotten that I'm Carson's wife? Harold, Faye's husband, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting between the damning letters and his wife's furious countenance. Faye, what is the meaning of this? Before she could respond, Carson's sister, Allison, spoke up, her voice laced with disgust. It means my dear brother has been unfaithful, father, to Margot, to this family. A heavy silence descended upon the room, thick with tension and unspoken accusations. I could feel the weight of their judgmental stares, but I refused to shrink away, to cower in the face of their scrutiny. Well, I challenged, my gaze sweeping over the assembled family members. Does anyone else have anything to say? Faye's lips curled into a sneer. You're making a fool of yourself, Margot. Carson would never betray me like this. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Betray you? Is that what you think this is about, Faye? Open your eyes. Your son has been carrying on an affair behind my back, and you've been too blinded by your own twisted desires to see it. Carson flinched as if struck, his face flushing with shame. Margot, please, let me explain. But I had no interest in his excuses, his feeble attempts at justification. Explain what, Carson? How you lied to me, day after day, while you were off gallivanting with your mistress. Or maybe you'd like to explain why you allowed your vile mother to abuse and torment me, all in the name of keeping up appearances. Faye's eyes narrowed dangerously. Watch your tone, girl. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? I shot back, my voice rising with each syllable. I have the bruises, the recordings, the proof of every vicious word and cruel taunt you've hurled at me over these past months. Harold's brow furrowed, his gaze shifting towards his wife with a newfound wariness. Faye, is this true? Have you been mistreating Margot? Before she could respond, I plowed ahead, determined to lay bare the full extent of their betrayal. It's all true, Harold, every word. And it's not just Faye. Carson has been lying to us all, carrying on an affair right under our noses. A collective gasp rippled through the room, and I could see the realization dawning on their faces, the scales finally falling from their eyes. Allison was the first to speak, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. You bastard! How could you do this to Margot, to your own children? Carson opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off with a sharp wave of my hand. Save it, Carson. I'm done with your lies, your manipulation. From this moment on, you and your mother have no hold over me or my children. We're through. As the chaos erupted around me, with Faye and Carson desperately trying to regain control of the situation, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The shackles of their oppression had finally been broken, and I was free. Free to forge my own path, to build the life I deserved for myself and my babies. And as Harold and Allison rallied to my side, their support and solidarity a balm against the sting of betrayal, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the strength and resilience that had carried me through this darkest of storms. The war was won, and I had emerged victorious. You played me for a fool, Faye. Harold's voice was cold, unyielding, as he stared down his wife, his eyes hard as flint. All these years, and I never knew the true depths of your cruelty. Faye's lips twisted into a sneer, but I could see the fear flickering in her eyes as the full weight of her actions finally caught up to her. Harold, please, you don't understand. Don't I? He cut her off, his tone sharp as a blade. You abused my daughter-in-law, threatened to take her children from her. And for what? Some twisted sense of control? Carson stepped forward, his face etched with desperation. Dad, Mom, please, we can work through this, as a family. But Harold was having none of it, his gaze swinging towards his son with a mixture of disappointment and disgust. And you, Carson, how could you let this happen? How could you stand by while your own wife was tormented, all for the sake of keeping up appearances? Carson flinched as if struck, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I almost felt a pang of pity for him, caught in the crossfire of his own making. Almost. I never meant for things to go this far, he mumbled, his voice barely audible. I was just trying to protect Mom, to keep the family together. A bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. Protect her? From what, Carson? The consequences of her own actions? Allison stepped forward, her eyes blazing with righteous fury as she glared at her brother and mother. You're both pathetic. Margot has shown more strength and resilience in these past few months than either of you could ever hope to muster. A swell of gratitude washed over me at her words, her unwavering support a balm against the sting of betrayal. At least someone in this twisted family had their priorities straight. Faye's gaze swung towards me, her expression a mixture of hatred and begrudging respect. So what now, Margot? You've had your little tantrum, exposed us all for the world to see. Are you satisfied? I met her glare head-on, my spine straight and unyielding. Satisfied? Hardly. I want you out of this house, Faye. Out of our lives, until you can learn to treat me with the respect I deserve as Carson's wife and the mother of your grandchildren. A stunned silence fell over the room, broken only by the sound of Harold's slow, deliberate clapping. Well said, Margot, he murmured, his gaze never leaving his wife's face. You heard her, Faye. Pack your things and leave. I won't have you poisoning this family any longer with your bitterness and manipulation. Faye's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her carefully cultivated facade of control crumbling before our very eyes. Harold, you can't be serious. But the look in his eyes brooked no argument, no room for negotiation. For once, the iron-willed matriarch had met her match, and she had no choice but to bend to the collective will of those she had sought to dominate for so long. As she stormed from the room, her parting glare promising retribution, I couldn't help but feel a sense of victory, of hard-won triumph. The battle had been fought, the war won, and though the scars of betrayal still stung, I knew that I had emerged stronger, more resilient than ever before. Carson's pleading gaze found mine, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. Margot, please, give me a chance to make things right. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, your love. I studied him for a long moment, weighing the sincerity of his words against the weight of his transgressions. In the end, only time would tell if our bond could truly be mended, if the wounds of his infidelity would ever fully heal. But as I felt the gentle flutters of life within me, a reminder of the precious souls I carried, I knew that I owed it to them, and to myself, to at least try. We'll see, Carson, I murmured, my voice laced with a cautious hope. We'll see. We've been through hell, but this new chapter is ours. Carson's voice was soft, remorseful, as he cradled one of our newborn twins, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I promise I'll spend every day making it up to you and our children. I studied his weary features, the lines of exhaustion etched deep into his face after the tumultuous events of the past few months. A part of me still seethed with anger, the memory of his betrayal a festering wound that refused to heal. And yet, as I gazed down at the tiny miracles swaddled in my arms, I knew that harboring that rage would only breed more toxicity, more pain. I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again, Carson, I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. What you did, what your mother did, it nearly broke me. He flinched, but nodded, his expression one of resigned acceptance. I know, and I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But please, Margot, let me prove myself to you, to our family. Give me a chance to be the husband, the father, that you all deserve. A gentle hand on my shoulder made me turn, and I found myself gazing into the kind eyes of Harold, my father-in-law and unexpected ally through this entire ordeal. He's not the only one who needs to atone, Harold said, his voice laced with regret. I should have seen what Faye was doing, put a stop to her cruelty before it went too far. For that, I am truly sorry, Margot. I felt a lump form in my throat at his words, touched by his humility and willingness to shoulder the blame. Thank you, Harold. That means more than you know. Allison stepped forward, her expression one of fierce determination. We're a family, Margot, and families stick together no matter what. Carson and Faye made mistakes, but we'll get through this together. A warm sense of gratitude washed over me as I looked around at the faces of those who had rallied to my side, who had chosen to stand against the toxic influences that had nearly torn us all apart. Though the road ahead was uncertain, I knew that with their support, their unwavering loyalty, we could overcome any obstacle. All right, I said, my voice strengthening with each syllable. We'll take it one day at a time, rebuild what was broken. But know this, Carson, one more misstep, one more lie, and you're out. I won't let our children grow up in an environment of mistrust and manipulation, not again. Carson nodded solemnly, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and renewed determination. You have my word, Margot. From now on, it's just us, a family, united and strong. As I gazed down at the precious bundles in my arms, their tiny faces scrunched in peaceful slumber, I felt a surge of fierce love and protectiveness. These children, my children, would know only love, only safety and security. The shadows of the past would not be allowed to dim their futures, not while I still drew breath. Faye's specter lingered in the periphery, a constant reminder of the darkness we had overcome. But in that moment, surrounded by the warmth and solidarity of those who truly mattered, I knew that her hold over us was broken, forever shattered by the resilience of our bond. A new chapter was beginning, one forged in the fires of hardship and betrayal, but tempered by the strength of our love and the unbreakable ties that bound us together as a family. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. We would face it united, our spirits unbowed, our resolve unshakable, for we were survivors, warriors in our own right, and no force on earth could ever break us again. I stared at the bank statement in disbelief, my hands shaking. This couldn't be right. I blinked, hoping the numbers would magically change, but they remained stubbornly the same. A $50,000 loan from Richard's parents? When did this happen? "Richard," I called out, my voice echoing through our suburban home. "Can you come here for a second?" I heard his footsteps approaching, and he appeared in the doorway of our home office, an easy smile on his face. "What's up, Lucia?" I held up the statement. "Care to explain this?" His smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "Oh, that? It's nothing to worry about, honey. Just a little financial help from Mom and Dad." "A little help?" I felt my blood pressure rising. "Richard, $50,000 is not a little help. When were you planning on telling me about this?" He shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "I didn't think it was a big deal. You know how my parents are, always wanting to help out." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. That's not the point. We're married. We're supposed to make these decisions together. "Look, Lucia," he said, his tone turning patronizing, "I didn't want to bother you with the details. You've been so busy with work lately, I thought I'd handle it." I stood up, facing him directly. "Handle it? By going behind my back? We agreed to be open about our finances when we got married, remember?" Richard's face hardened. "I made an executive decision. Sometimes that's necessary in a marriage." "Necessary?" I scoffed. "What was so necessary that you needed $50,000 without discussing it with me?" He waved his hand dismissively. "It's complicated, business stuff. You wouldn't understand." That stung. "Try me," I challenged. Richard sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, can we talk about this later? I have a meeting in 10 minutes. I felt the anger bubbling up inside me. "No, we can't talk about this later. This is important, Richard. We need to discuss this now." He checked his watch, impatience clear on his face. "I don't have time for this right now, Lucia. We'll talk tonight, okay?" Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, stunned and furious. I sank back into my chair, my mind racing. This wasn't like Richard. We'd always been open with each other, especially about money. What was he hiding? My phone buzzed, startling me. It was a text from my best friend Meredith. "Lunch today? I need girl talk." I smiled despite my anger. Meredith always had perfect timing. "Absolutely," I texted back. "You won't believe what I just found out." As I gathered my things to leave, I noticed a piece of mail on Richard's desk. It was addressed to him, but the return address caught my eye. Stella Jewelers. My stomach twisted. Our anniversary wasn't for months, and my birthday had just passed. I picked up the envelope, weighing it in my hand. It felt like it contained a small box. Should I open it? No, I decided, putting it back down. I wasn't going to stoop to his level of secrecy. But as I walked out the door, the image of that envelope burned in my mind. First the loan, now this mysterious package. What else was Richard hiding? I climbed into my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. As I pulled out of the driveway, I made a silent vow to myself. I was going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. Richard might think he could keep secrets from me, but he was about to learn just how determined I could be. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would turn my entire world upside down. I couldn't shake the unease that had settled over me since discovering Richard's secret loan. As I sat at my desk, trying to focus on work, my mind kept drifting back to our argument. Something wasn't adding up. The ping of an incoming email jolted me from my thoughts. It was from Richard. "Hey, honey, can you transfer $300 to my account for this month's expenses? Thanks." I blinked at the screen, confused. Only $300? That was barely enough to cover groceries, let alone our other bills. Richard's six-figure salary had always covered most of our expenses. What was going on? I picked up my phone and dialed his number. It went straight to voicemail. Typical. Richard, it's me. We need to talk about this $300. Call me back, please. Hours ticked by with no response. By dinner time, I was fuming. The front door opened, and Richard strolled in, whistling. Hey, Lucia, he said, dropping his briefcase. What's for dinner? I crossed my arms. We need to talk. His smile faltered. About what? About the $300 you asked for. Richard, that's not nearly enough for our monthly expenses. What's going on? He shrugged, heading for the fridge. I thought we could tighten our belts a bit. Save some money. Save money, I echoed. Since when have you been concerned about saving, and why now, right after taking out a huge loan from your parents? Richard's back stiffened. He turned to face me, his expression guarded. Look, Lucia, I told you not to worry about that loan. I've got everything under control. Do you? I challenged. Because from where I'm standing, nothing about this seems under control. First the loan, now this. What aren't you telling me? He slammed the fridge door shut. For God's sake, Lucia, can't you just trust me? I'm handling our finances. That's my job. Your job? I felt my temper rising. I thought we were partners in this marriage. When did it become your job to make unilateral decisions about our money? Richard ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident on his face. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's just money. Just money. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Richard, money is what keeps a roof over our heads and food on our table. It's not just anything. He waved a dismissive hand. You're being hysterical. I've got everything under control. Now can we please just have dinner and forget about this? I stood there, stunned by his cavalier attitude. This wasn't the Richard I knew. The man I married would never dismiss my concerns like this. Fine, I said, my voice cold. Dinner's in the oven. I've lost my appetite. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Richard to serve himself. As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, I heard him muttering under his breath. Once in our room, I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. Something was seriously wrong. Richard's behavior, the secret loan, the measly $300 for expenses. None of it made sense. I pulled out my phone and texted Meredith. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? I need your advice. Her response was immediate. Of course, everything okay? I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Was everything okay? I didn't think so, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what was wrong. I don't know, I finally replied. I'll explain tomorrow. As I set my phone down, I heard Richard's footsteps on the stairs. I quickly wiped away the tears I hadn't realized were falling and steeled myself for another confrontation. But when he entered the room, he didn't say a word. He just grabbed his pajamas and headed for the bathroom, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a growing sense of dread. Whatever was going on with Richard, I was determined to find out. And I had a feeling I wasn't going to like what I discovered. I couldn't sleep that night, tossing and turning as my mind raced with questions about Richard's behavior. By morning, I was exhausted but determined to get answers. While Richard was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked his phone. My hands shook as I scrolled through his messages and emails. What I found made my blood run cold. Credit card bills, expensive restaurant receipts, hotel charges, all hidden from our joint account. I heard the shower turn off and quickly put the phone back. When Richard emerged, I was sitting on the bed, my face pale. Lucia, you okay? He asked, toweling his hair. I looked up at him, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Richard, we need to talk about our finances, now. He sighed, dropping the towel. Not this again. I told you, I've got it under control. Really? I stood up, my anger rising. Then explain the credit card bills I found. The restaurants, the hotels. Where's all that money coming from, Richard? His face darkened. You went through my phone? What happened to trust? Trust? I laughed bitterly. You lost that right when you started hiding things from me. Now answer the question. Richard's jaw clenched. It's work-related, client meetings, business trips. You wouldn't understand. Try me, I challenged. He turned away, buttoning his shirt. I don't have time for this. I'm late for work. As he headed for the door, I called after him. If you walk out now, don't bother coming back tonight. He paused, hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn around. Then, without a word, He left. I sank onto the bed, my head in my hands. How had we come to this? My phone buzzed, a reminder of my coffee date with Meredith. I grabbed my purse and headed out, desperate for a friendly face. Meredith was already at our usual spot, 2 steaming cups waiting. One look at my face and she knew something was wrong. "Spill," she said, pushing a coffee towards me. I told her everything, the loan, the $300, the hidden expenses. Her eyes widened with each revelation. "Lucia," she said gently when I finished, "have you considered that Richard might be seeing someone else?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "No," I whispered. "He wouldn't." But even as I said it, doubt crept in. The hotels, the expensive dinners, it all suddenly made a horrible kind of sense. "What am I going to do?" I asked, fighting back tears. Meredith squeezed my hand. "First, we're going to get proof. Then we're going to make him pay." We spent the next few hours plotting. By the time I got home, I had a plan. I logged into our joint account, my heart sinking as I saw the balance. Most of our savings were gone. I checked our credit card statements next, finding charge after charge for things I'd never seen or known about. As I dug deeper, I uncovered a web of financial deceit that left me breathless. Richard had been living a double life, spending money we didn't have on God knows what or who. The front door opened, and Richard walked in. He looked tired, his tie loosened. "Lucia," he started, "about this morning." I cut him off. "I know everything, Richard. The credit cards, the drained savings. How could you do this to us?" He paled, stammering. "I can explain." "Save it," I snapped. "I want the truth, all of it, now." Richard slumped into a chair, looking defeated. I made some bad investments. I thought I could fix it before you found out." "And the hotels, the restaurants?" I pressed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Business meetings, networking." I knew he was lying, but I couldn't prove it. Not yet. "I want access to all our accounts," I demanded. "No more secrets." Richard nodded, looking relieved that I hadn't pushed further. But as he headed upstairs, I caught a glimpse of his phone screen lighting up with a message. From someone named Stella. My heart raced. Who was Stella? And what else was Richard hiding? I had a feeling I was about to uncover something far worse than financial troubles. And I wasn't sure our marriage could survive it. The name Stella haunted me for days. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was more than just a business contact. Richard's secretive behavior and our dwindling finances painted a picture I didn't want to see, but couldn't ignore. I was lost in these thoughts when the doorbell rang. A delivery man stood outside, holding a small package. "Delivery for Richard Thompson," he said cheerfully. I signed for it, my heart racing. The return address read Stella Jewelers, the same name from the message on Richard's phone. With trembling hands, I brought the package inside. I knew I shouldn't open it, but the weight of secrets and lies was crushing me. I had to know. I carefully unwrapped the package, revealing a velvet box. Inside was a stunning diamond necklace, far more extravagant than anything Richard had ever bought me. A small card fell out. "To my dearest Stella, happy anniversary. All my love, Richard." The room spun. I clutched the necklace, its cold diamonds biting into my palm. This was no business gift. This was proof of something far worse. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the necklace. The sound of Richard's key in the lock jolted me back to reality. I quickly shoved everything back into the box and hid it under a couch cushion. Richard walked in, his usual charming smile in place. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" I stood up, my legs shaky. "Richard, we need to talk." His smile faltered. "What's wrong? Who's Stella?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. The color drained from his face. "What?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," I snapped, pulling out the package. "Explain this." Richard's eyes widened as he saw the jewelry box. He reached for it, but I snatched it away. "Lucia, it's not what you think," he stammered. "Really? Because I think you're having an affair. I think you've been lying to me about everything, the money, the loans, all of it." Richard's demeanor changed. His shoulders straightened and a cold look entered his eyes. "You had no right to open that. It's none of your business." His words hit me like a slap. "None of my business? I'm your wife." He laughed, a harsh sound that made me flinch. "My wife? Is that what you think you are? You're just a convenience, Lucia, someone to keep the house clean and look good at company parties." I staggered back, shocked by his cruelty. How long?" "Long enough," he sneered. Stella understands me in ways you never could. She doesn't nag about money or snoop through my things. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. So all of this, our marriage, our life together, it's been a lie? Richard shrugged, reaching for the necklace. It is what it is. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans tonight. As he turned to leave, something snapped inside me. Years of love, trust, and shared dreams crumbled in an instant. In their place, a fierce anger rose. You're not going anywhere, I said, my voice low and dangerous. He turned back, eyebrow raised. Excuse me? I stood tall, meeting his gaze. You heard me. You're not leaving this house until we sort this out. All of it, the money, the affair, everything. Richard's face darkened. You can't tell me what to do. Watch me, I challenged. I've got proof of your financial misdeeds, Richard. One call to the police and your perfect little world comes crashing down. Fear flashed in his eyes, quickly replaced by anger. You wouldn't dare. I pulled out my phone. Try me. We stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. I knew in that moment that everything had changed. The man I loved was gone, replaced by this stranger who'd betrayed me in every possible way. As I dialed the first digit, I realized there was no going back. Whatever happened next would change our lives forever, and I was ready for it. My finger hovered over the phone, Richard's face a mask of fury and fear. Just as I was about to press the final digit, Meredith's voice echoed in my head. Don't do anything rash, we need proof. I lowered the phone, my heart pounding. You have one chance to explain everything, Richard. One chance to save whatever's left of our marriage. He sneered, but I saw the relief in his eyes. There's nothing to explain. You're overreacting as usual. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Fine, if that's how you want to play it, I'll find the truth myself. I stormed out of the house, leaving Richard standing there dumbfounded. I drove straight to Meredith's place, tears blurring my vision. Meredith opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. Oh, honey, what happened? Between sobs, I told her everything. The necklace, Stella, Richard's cruel words. Meredith listened, her face growing darker with each revelation. That bastard, she muttered. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to find this Stella, and we're going to get proof of everything. For the next few hours, we played detective. Meredith, it turned out, had a knack for online sleuthing. We scoured social media, piecing together the puzzle of Richard's secret life. Look at this, Meredith said, pointing to her laptop screen. It was a photo of Richard at a restaurant, his arm around a young blonde woman. The caption read, Anniversary dinner with my love, 2 years strong. The date was from last month. 2 years. He'd been cheating on me for 2 years. There's more, Meredith said gently. She pulled up financial records, showing large transfers from our joint account to an unknown recipient. He's been funneling money to her, I whispered, the reality of his betrayal sinking in. Meredith squeezed my hand. Lucia, I hate to say this, but I think it's time to talk to a lawyer. I nodded, numb. You're right. This marriage is over. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Richard. Where are you? Come home. We need to talk. I showed Meredith the message. Her eyes narrowed. Don't go alone. I'm coming with you. When we arrived at the house, Richard was pacing in the living room. He looked up, surprise flashing across his face when he saw Meredith. What's she doing here? He demanded. She's here to support me, I said, my voice steady, while you tear our life apart. Richard's face softened, a look I'd seen him use countless times to charm his way out of trouble. Lucia, baby, I'm sorry. I made a mistake, but I love you. We can work this out. I almost laughed. Work it out? After 2 years of lies? After draining our accounts for your mistress? His eyes widened. How did you? It doesn't matter, I cut him off. What matters is that it's over, Richard. I want a divorce. The charm vanished from his face, replaced by cold anger. You'll regret this, Lucia. You're nothing without me. Meredith stepped forward, fire in her eyes. Watch it, Richard. One more word and I'll show you just how much Lucia doesn't need you. Richard glared at us both, then stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I sank onto the couch, exhaustion washing over me. What do I do now? Meredith sat beside me, her arm around my shoulders. Now we fight. We get you the best lawyer in town, and we make sure Richard pays for every lie, every betrayal. I nodded, a new determination rising within me. Richard thought I was nothing without him? I'd show him just how wrong he was. As I sat there planning my next move, I realized something. The pain of Richard's betrayal was still there, but alongside it was a growing sense of freedom. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. "Okay," I said, sitting up straighter. "Let's do this. It's time Richard learned that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." Meredith grinned, a fierce light in her eyes. "That's my girl. Let's make him rue the day he ever messed with Lucia Thompson." As we began to plan, I knew the road ahead would be tough. But I was ready. Richard had underestimated me for the last time. Now it was my turn to show him and the world exactly what I was made of. The day of reckoning had arrived. Armed with a folder full of evidence and Meredith by my side, I marched into our house, ready for the final confrontation with Richard. He was in his study, lounging in his leather chair, as if he didn't have a care in the world. The sight of him, so nonchalant after everything he'd done, made my blood boil. "Richard," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me, "we need to talk." He looked up, his eyes narrowing when he saw Meredith. "I thought I told you to come alone." "And I thought we had a faithful marriage," I shot back. "Looks like we were both wrong." I slammed the folder on his desk, spreading out bank statements, hotel receipts, and screenshots of his conversations with Stella. "Care to explain this?" I asked, watching the color drain from his face. Richard's eyes darted between the documents, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, his demeanor changed. He leaned back, a smug smile spreading across his face. "So what?" he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You caught me. Congratulations. What are you going to do about it?" His cavalier attitude stunned me. "What am I going to do? I'm divorcing you, Richard, and I'm taking everything." He laughed, a cold, cruel sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Good luck with that, sweetheart. You signed a prenup, remember? You'll get nothing." My heart sank. The prenup. How could I have forgotten? But then Meredith stepped forward, a fierce glint in her eye. "Actually, Richard," she said, pulling out another document, "that prenup becomes null and void in cases of infidelity, and we have more than enough proof of that." Richard's smug expression faltered. "You're bluffing." "Try us," I challenged. "We've got statements from the private investigator, testimony from hotel staff, even a signed affidavit from Stella herself." At the mention of Stella's name, Richard's composure cracked. "You talked to Stella?" "Oh, yes," Meredith chimed in. "She was quite helpful once we explained how you've been siphoning company funds to finance your little affair. Turns out she's not too keen on being an accessory to embezzlement." Richard lunged for the phone, but I was quicker. I snatched it away, my heart pounding. "It's over, Richard," I said. "You've lost everything. The company knows about the embezzlement. Stella's gone. And now I'm leaving too." For a moment, I saw fear in his eyes. Then, like a cornered animal, he lashed out. "You think you can survive without me?" he snarled. "You're nothing, Lucia. Just a trophy wife who got lucky. Without me, you'll be back to being a nobody in no time." His words stung, but I stood my ground. I'd rather be a nobody with dignity than spend another second as your wife. I turned to leave, but Richard grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. "You're not going anywhere," he growled. Suddenly, Meredith was there, her phone out. "Let her go, Richard, or I start live streaming. I'm sure your company would love to see how you treat women." Richard released me, his face contorted with rage. "This isn't over," he spat. "Oh, but it is," I said, rubbing my arm. "Goodbye, Richard." As we walked out, I heard the crash of something being thrown against the wall, but I didn't look back. My legs were shaky, and tears threatened to spill, but I held my head high. Outside, I took a deep breath of fresh air. It felt like my first real breath in years. "You did it," Meredith said, squeezing my hand. "You're free." I nodded, a mix of relief and fear washing over me. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was mine to choose. As we drove away, I realized this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of my new life, and despite the pain and uncertainty, I was ready to embrace it. The keys to my new apartment felt heavy in my hand as I stood at the threshold. This small, one-bedroom space was a far cry from the luxurious house I'd shared with Richard, but it was mine. All mine. I took a deep breath and stepped inside, the weight of my new reality settling on my shoulders. Freedom tasted bittersweet. "Home sweet home," I murmured to myself, setting down the last of my boxes. My phone buzzed. It was an email from my lawyer. The divorce proceedings were moving forward, but Richard was fighting tooth and nail for every penny. I sighed, feeling the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. Just then, another email popped up. This one made my heart race. It was from my boss, requesting an urgent meeting. With trembling fingers, I dialed her number. "Lucia," she said, her voice tense. "We need to talk about your position at the company." My throat went dry. "What about it?" "Richard has been making some claims. He's suggesting that you were complicit in his financial misdeeds." The room spun. "That's a lie," I exclaimed. "I had no idea what he was doing." "I believe you," my boss said, "but the board is concerned. We need to conduct an internal investigation. In the meantime," I knew what was coming before she said it. "You're suspending me." "With pay," she added quickly. "But yes, I'm sorry, Lucia." I ended the call, my mind reeling. Richard had struck again, this time aiming for my career. The one thing I had left. I sank onto my new second-hand couch, fighting back tears. How much more could I lose? My phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello," I said warily. "Is this Lucia Thompson?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Stella." I nearly dropped the phone. "Stella, Richard's ex-mistress," she finished. "Listen, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need to talk to you. It's about Richard." My heart pounded. "What about him?" He's not done with you, Lucia. He's planning something big, something that could ruin you completely." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean?" "Meet me," Stella said urgently. "I'll explain everything." I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown, my mind racing. What could Richard possibly have planned? Hadn't he taken enough from me already? As I grabbed my purse to leave, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Meredith. "Lucia, turn on the news, now." I fumbled for the remote, flicking on the small TV in my new apartment. My jaw dropped as I saw Richard's face filling the screen. "Allegations against my soon-to-be ex-wife, Lucia Thompson," he was saying, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "It pains me to reveal this, but she was the mastermind behind the embezzlement scheme. I was merely a pawn in her elaborate fraud." I watched in horror as Richard spun a web of lies, painting me as a manipulative criminal who had used him for his money and connections. He even produced doctored documents and emails to support his claims. My phone was ringing off the hook now. My lawyer, my parents, even old college friends. But I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I was watching my life, my reputation, everything I'd worked for, crumble before my eyes. In that moment, standing alone in my small apartment, watching Richard destroy me on national television, I felt more alone and defeated than ever before. But beneath the shock and despair, a spark of determination flickered to life. Richard thought he'd won. He thought he'd broken me for good. But he'd underestimated me once before, and I wasn't about to let him do it again. With shaking hands, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. I had a meeting with Stella to get to, and this time, I was going to fight back with everything I had. The game wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. I stood outside the courthouse, my heart pounding. This was it. The final showdown. Months of legal battles, sleepless nights, and relentless determination had led to this moment. As I walked in, I caught sight of Richard. He looked haggard, a far cry from the polished man I'd married. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I once loved. But then his gaze hardened and I remembered why we were here. The courtroom was packed. I saw Meredith in the back giving me a reassuring nod. And there, to my surprise, was Stella, looking nervous but determined. As the judge entered, a hush fell over the room. Richard's lawyer spoke first, weaving a tale of my supposed deceit and manipulation. I gripped the edge of my seat, willing myself to stay calm. Then it was our turn. My lawyer stood, a stack of documents in hand. "Your Honor, we have evidence that will prove beyond doubt that Mr. Thompson, not Mrs. Thompson, was the sole perpetrator of these financial crimes." What followed was a meticulous unraveling of Richard's lies. Bank statements, witness testimonies, and, most damning of all, a series of emails between Richard and his co-conspirators, detailing every step of his embezzlement scheme. I watched Richard's face as the truth came to light. His cool facade crumbled, replaced by panic and then defeat. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. Stella stood up, her voice shaky but clear. "Your Honor, I have something to add." She produced a USB drive. This contains recordings of Mr. Thompson admitting to his crimes and planning to frame Mrs. Thompson. He thought I was asleep when he made these calls. Richard's face went ashen. Stella, how could you? He hissed. She met his gaze steadily. Because it's the right thing to do. As the judge reviewed the new evidence, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The truth was finally out. The verdict came swiftly. Richard was found guilty on all counts. As the judge detailed his sentence, jail time, and hefty fines, I saw Richard's parents in the gallery, their faces a mix of shock and disappointment. Outside the courthouse, Richard's father approached me. Lucia, he said, his voice heavy with regret, we had no idea. We want to make this right. They offered to pay the settlement we'd agreed upon in the divorce to help undo some of the damage their son had caused. It wouldn't erase the pain, but it was a start. As I watched Richard being led away in handcuffs, a complex mix of emotions washed over me. Relief, sadness, and finally a sense of freedom. Meredith hugged me tightly. It's over, Lucia. You did it. I nodded, tears in my eyes. We did it. In the weeks that followed, life began to take on a new shape. My name was cleared, and I was reinstated at work with a promotion. The settlement from Richard's parents allowed me to start fresh, on my own terms. One sunny afternoon, as I was setting up my new home office, I found an old photo of Richard and me. We were smiling, blissfully unaware of what lay ahead. For a moment, I mourned for that innocent couple. But then I looked around at my new life, built with my own strength, surrounded by true friends and full of possibilities. I realized that while the journey had been painful, it had led me to a place of authenticity and self-discovery I might never have found otherwise. I picked up the photo and, after a moment's hesitation, placed it in a drawer. It was part of my past, but it no longer defined my future. As I closed the drawer, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my new mentor at work, offering to grab coffee and discuss my ideas for our upcoming project. I smiled, feeling a surge of excitement. This was my life now, full of challenges, yes, but also full of opportunity and genuine connections. Time for a new chapter, I said to myself, grabbing my keys. As I stepped out into the sunshine, I felt lighter than I had in years. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it might lead. Richard had tried to break me, but in the end he'd only made me stronger, and that strength would carry me forward into whatever adventures lay ahead. I jolted awake, my heart pounding in my chest. The recurring nightmare of finding that damning email on Aaron's laptop had become all too familiar lately. As I reached for my phone to check the time, the harsh glow of the screen confirmed it was well past midnight. Aaron still wasn't home. I sighed deeply, the frustration and loneliness I'd grown accustomed to settling in once more. When had our marriage taken such a sharp turn? Aaron used to be the most attentive and loving husband a woman could ask for. But over the past few years, his obsession with work had consumed him, leaving me to fend for myself more often than not. Memories of our early years together flooded my mind. The way he used to look at me, his eyes sparkling with adoration, the spontaneous weekend getaways and romantic gestures that made my heart flutter. Those were the moments that had made me fall head over heels for him. The moments that had convinced me he was my soulmate. But lately, those moments had become few and far between. Aaron's constant business trips and late nights at the office had driven a wedge between us, and the distance only seemed to be growing wider with each passing day. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder if the suspicious email I'd found was just the tip of the iceberg. Was Aaron really working as hard as he claimed, or was there something or someone else occupying his time? The thought made my stomach churn, but I couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion any longer. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. With a heavy heart, I rose from bed and made my way to the home office. Aaron's laptop sat closed on his desk, as if taunting me with the secrets it held. I took a deep breath and opened it, my fingers trembling as I navigated to his email inbox. There it was, the message that had set off this whirlwind of doubt and mistrust. A innocuous-looking email from an unknown sender, but with a subject line that made my blood run cold. "Can't wait to see you again, my love." I felt the tears welling up in my eyes as I read and reread those words. each time feeling like a knife to my heart. Was this proof of Aaron's infidelity? Or was I simply letting my insecurities get the better of me? One thing was certain, I couldn't let this go unanswered any longer. As soon as Aaron walked through that door, I was going to demand answers, and if he was lying to me, there would be hell to pay. The sound of Aaron's key turning in the lock sent a jolt through my body. I quickly minimized the incriminating email and composed myself, my heart racing in anticipation of the confrontation to come. As he stepped through the door, Aaron's eyes went wide with surprise at seeing me still awake. "Marta, what are you doing up so late?" I fixed him with a stern glare, the anger and hurt I'd been bottling up for months finally bubbling to the surface. "Where have you been, Aaron? And don't give me that working late excuse again." He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I told you it's this big project I'm overseeing. It's a make-or-break deal for the company. And yet you have time to send flirtatious emails to other women?" I spat, slamming the laptop lid shut with a bang. Aaron's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb with me," I shouted, shoving the printout of the damning email in his face. "Who is she, Aaron? Tell me right now, or so help me." He recoiled, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. Whoa, calm down. It's not what you think, I swear." I scoffed, feeling the tears of betrayal stinging my eyes. "Really? Then what is it, Aaron? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been carrying on an affair behind my back." Aaron's jaw clenched, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt cross his features. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a mask of indifference. "You're overreacting, Marta. It's just a harmless flirtation, nothing more." "Harmless?" I echoed, my voice dripping with disbelief. "How can you stand there and lie to my face like that?" He sighed again, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Look, I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression, but I promise you there's nothing going on. This project has just been incredibly stressful, and sometimes I let off a little steam by flirting online. It doesn't mean anything." I stared at him, searching his eyes for any hint of sincerity, but all I found was a cold but half-detached gaze that chilled me to the bone. In that moment, I realized that the man standing before me was a stranger, a far cry from the loving, attentive husband I had once known. "You know what, Aaron?" I said, my voice low and trembling with barely contained fury. "I don't believe a word you're saying, and if you think I'm just going to sit back and let you continue to disrespect me and our marriage like this, you've got another thing coming." Aaron's brow furrowed, and for a brief moment I thought I saw a flicker of concern in his eyes. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that same infuriating nonchalance. "Marta, please," he said, reaching out to touch my arm. "Don't do anything rash. We can work through this, I promise." But as I jerked away from his grasp, I knew in my heart that there was no going back. The trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship was shattered beyond repair, and no amount of empty promises could fix it. "Save it, Aaron," I spat, turning on my heel and heading for the bedroom. "I'm done listening to your lies. From now on, you're going to have to face the consequences of your actions." As I slammed the door behind me, cutting off any further protest from Aaron, a single thought ran through my mind. If he thought this was over, he had no idea what was coming. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me from my restless slumber. I squinted at the caller ID. It was my older sister, Beth. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice still thick with sleep. "Marta, it's me. I'm sorry for calling so early, but I just had a feeling something was wrong," Beth said, her tone laced with concern. I sighed deeply, the weight of the previous night's confrontation with Aaron settling back onto my shoulders. "You could say that." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "It's Aaron, isn't it? What did that bastard do this time?" Despite the gravity of the situation, I couldn't help but crack a small smile at Beth's protective nature. She had never been Aaron's biggest fan, always claiming there was something off about him that she couldn't quite put her finger on. "I found an email on his laptop," I began, the words catching in my throat. "It was from some woman calling him my love and saying she couldn't wait to see him again." Beth let out a low whistle. "Wow, he's not even trying to hide it anymore, is he? That slimy son of a bitch." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. "I confronted him about it last night, But he just brushed it off as harmless flirtation. Like that's supposed to make it okay? Of course he did, Beth scoffed. Men like Aaron think they can get away with anything. They lie and cheat and manipulate, and then expect us to just roll over and take it. Her words struck a chord deep within me, fanning the flames of anger and resentment that had been simmering since my discovery. She was right. I had spent far too long letting Aaron walk all over me, making excuses for his behavior while he carried on without a care in the world. Well, not this time, I said, my voice taking on a steely edge. I'm not going to just sit back and let him continue to disrespect me like this. There was a pause, and then Beth spoke again, her tone slightly softer. What are you going to do, sis? I took a deep breath, the beginnings of a plan formulating in my mind. For starters, I'm going to gather more evidence. If he thinks he can just sweep this under the rug with a few empty promises, he's got another thing coming. That's my girl, Beth said approvingly. You document every little thing, every shady email, every suspicious phone call. Build an airtight case against that lying snake. I nodded, feeling a newfound sense of determination coursing through my veins. And that's just the beginning. By the time I'm through with him, Aaron is going to wish he never laid eyes on that other woman. Beth let out a low chuckle. Atta girl. Give him hell, Marta. He deserves every bit of it and more. As I hung up the phone, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For too long I had been the victim, the dutiful wife pushed aside and disrespected by her unfaithful husband. But no more. From that moment on, the tables were turned, and Aaron was the one who would be made to pay for his transgressions. With a newfound sense of purpose, I got to work, meticulously documenting every shred of evidence I could find. Phone records, credit card statements, anything that could shed light on the depths of Aaron's betrayal. And as the incriminating trail grew longer, so too did my thirst for vengeance. Because at the end of the day, there was one thing I knew for certain. Aaron Thompson was going to get exactly what was coming to him, and I was going to be the one to deliver it. Over the next few weeks, I became a woman possessed, consumed by the singular goal of exposing Aaron's infidelity once and for all. Every spare moment was dedicated to tracking his movements, scouring through phone records and credit card statements for any shred of evidence that could shed light on his betrayal. And slowly but surely, the pieces began to fall into place. Late-night calls to an unknown number, charges for fancy dinners and hotel rooms that certainly weren't for business purposes. It was all there, right in front of me, a damning paper trail that left no doubt in my mind that Aaron had been carrying on an affair behind my back. But it wasn't until I stumbled across a series of flirtatious text messages that the full picture finally came into focus. The woman's name was Clara Evans, a 30-year-old project coordinator at Aaron's firm. And from the looks of things, she and Aaron had been involved in a torrid affair for quite some time. The messages made my stomach churn. The pet names, the suggestive language, the blatant disregard for the sanctity of our marriage. It was all there in black and white, a brutal reminder of just how little Aaron seemed to care about me or our vows. As I sat there, staring at the damning evidence before me, a wave of anger and humiliation washed over me. How could he do this to me? To us? After everything we'd been through together, how could he so callously throw it all away for some cheap fling with a woman half his age? In that moment, something inside me shifted. The hurt and betrayal I'd been feeling gave way to a burning desire for revenge, a primal need to make Aaron pay for his transgressions in the most public and humiliating way possible. And that's when the idea struck me. I knew from the messages that Aaron and Clara had plans to meet up for a romantic dinner that weekend at a fancy restaurant downtown. The perfect setting for a little surprise reunion, I thought to myself with a wicked grin. The next few days were a blur as I meticulously planned every last detail. I booked a reservation at the restaurant under a fake name, ensuring I'd be seated close enough to Aaron and Clara's table to cause maximum disruption. I even went so far as to have a new dress tailored. A slinky little number that was sure to turn heads and make Aaron realize exactly what he was throwing away. Finally, the night of reckoning arrived. As I stepped into the restaurant, my heart was pounding with a heady mix of nerves and anticipation. But the moment I spotted Aaron and Clara sitting in a cozy corner booth, All traces of doubt melted away, replaced by a steely resolve. "Well, well, well," I announced loudly, striding toward their table with purpose. "Isn't this just a cozy little date night?" Aaron's head whipped around, his eyes going wide with shock and fear as he registered my presence. "Marta, what are you doing here?" I fixed him with a withering glare, reveling in the way he seemed to shrink under my gaze. "Oh, I think you know exactly why I'm here, Aaron. This little charade of yours has gone on long enough." Clara, for her part, looked equally stunned, her perfectly made-up face twisted into an expression of abject horror. "Aaron, what's going on? Who is this woman?" I let out a derisive snort. "I'm his wife, you little homewrecker, the one he's been lying to and cheating on for God knows how long." The restaurant had gone deathly silent, all eyes trained on our dramatic confrontation. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew I should feel embarrassed, ashamed at causing such a public spectacle. But in that moment, I couldn't bring myself to care. Aaron was the one who should be ashamed of the lies, the betrayal, the utter disrespect he'd shown me in our marriage. And I was going to make sure the whole world knew it. "This little date ends tonight," I spat, leaning in close so only he and Clara could hear me. "You want to know what real karma looks like, Aaron? You're about to find out." The aftermath of my dramatic confrontation at the restaurant played out like a surreal blur. Aaron and Clara had scrambled to gather their things and beat a hasty retreat, their faces twisted in matching expressions of shock and humiliation. As for me, I simply stood there, reveling in the stunned silence that had fallen over the dining room, savoring the sweet taste of revenge. It wasn't until I got home that the full weight of what I'd done finally hit me. As the adrenaline wore off, a nagging sense of doubt began to creep in. Had I gone too far? Would Aaron ever be able to forgive me for such a public shaming? I shook my head, steeling my resolve. No, I couldn't afford to second-guess myself now. Aaron was the one who had brought this upon himself with his lies and infidelity. If anything, he should be grateful I hadn't done worse. Still, when he finally stumbled through the door a few hours later, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of apprehension. His face was pale, his eyes haunted, and for a brief moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Marta," he began, his voice little more than a hoarse whisper, "what you did tonight, I don't even know what to say." I fixed him with a cold, hard stare. "You don't have to say anything, Aaron. I think my actions spoke loud and clear." He winced, as if my words had physically struck him. "I know, and I deserved every bit of that humiliation. But please, you have to believe me when I say that Clara means nothing to me. It was just a fling, a moment of weakness that I deeply regret." I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "Do you really expect me to buy that? After everything you've put me through, all the lies and the sneaking around?" Aaron's shoulders slumped, and for a moment he looked utterly defeated. "You're right, I don't deserve your trust or your forgiveness. But I swear to you, Marta, from the bottom of my heart, I will spend every day making it up to you if you'll just give me another chance." His words hung heavy in the air, and for a brief moment, I actually found myself considering his plea. A part of me, the part that still clung to the memory of the man I had once loved, wanted desperately to believe that he could change, that we could somehow find our way back to the happiness we'd once shared. But then another voice, sharper and more insistent, cut through the haze of doubt. This was just another one of his lies, another empty promise designed to lull me into complacency while he continued his despicable behavior behind my back. "Well, not this time. You know what, Aaron?" I said, my voice taking on a steely edge. "I think I will give you another chance." His head snapped up, his eyes shining with a glimmer of hope. "Really? Oh, Marta, thank you. You won't regret this, I swear." I held up a hand, cutting off his effusive gratitude. "Don't thank me just yet. This is your one and only chance to come clean, to tell me everything about your affair with Clara and any other indiscretions you might have been hiding from me, and if I catch you in even the smallest lie, so help me God, you'll wish you'd never been born." Aaron visibly paled, but to his credit, he didn't back down. "You have my word, Marta. No more lies, no more secrets. I'll tell you everything. I swear it." I nodded, fixing him with a hard stare. "Good. Then you'd better start talking. And Aaron," I added, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, Don't leave anything out, because I promise you, I will find out eventually. And when I do, there will be hell to pay. As Aaron began to spill his sordid tale, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. He might think he was being given a second chance, but in reality, this was just the calm before the storm. Because no matter what he said, no matter how convincingly he begged for forgiveness, I knew in my heart that our marriage was already dead. Aaron had made his choice, and now it was time for him to face the consequences, and I would be the one to deliver them. In the days following Aaron's tearful confession, I did my best to play the part of the forgiving wife, nodding along as he laid out his grand plans for rebuilding our trust and making amends. But on the inside, I was already plotting my next move. True to his word, Aaron had come clean about the sordid details of his affair with Clara, but what he didn't know was that I had already set the wheels in motion for a far more sinister revenge, one that would make his indiscretions with that little homewrecker seem like child's play. It was Ethan, my old friend from college, who had first tipped me off. A private investigator by trade, he owed me a favor after I'd helped him out of a jam a few years back. And when I reached out to him about digging into Clara's background, what he uncovered was a tangled web of lies and deception that went far deeper than any of us could have imagined. Turned out, Clara's fling with Aaron was about more than just satisfying her twisted desires. No, this was a calculated move, a long con designed to bleed my husband's company dry from the inside out. She's been embezzling funds for months, Ethan explained, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table towards me. Funneling money into offshore accounts, using Aaron's access codes and inside knowledge to cover her tracks. I felt my blood run cold as I flipped through the damning evidence. Bank statements, wire transfer records, all of it meticulously documented and irrefutable. But how? How could she possibly have gotten her hands on that kind of sensitive information? Ethan shrugged, his expression grim. Your guess is as good as mine, but from what I can tell, she's been playing Aaron like a fiddle this whole time, using their affair as a way to keep him blind to her real motives. A wave of nausea washed over me as the full weight of Clara's deception hit me. Not only had the little snake been sleeping with my husband, but she'd also been using him as an unwitting pawn in her twisted game, putting his career and reputation on the line, all for her own selfish gain. In that moment, any lingering shred of sympathy or pity I might have felt for Aaron vanished, replaced by a burning desire to see him, and Clara, get exactly what they deserved. We have to take this to the authorities, I said, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. Get that bitch arrested and make sure Aaron gets dragged down with her for aiding and abetting her crimes. Ethan nodded grimly. You got it. I'll make sure this evidence gets into the right hands, anonymously, of course. Can't have anyone tracing it back to us. I nodded, a grim smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Of course. We'll let the wheels of justice do their work for now. But make no mistake, Ethan, by the time this is all over, Clara and Aaron are going to wish they'd never crossed me. As I left Ethan's office, I could already feel the weight of Aaron's deception lifting from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of grim satisfaction. For too long I had been the victim, forced to suffer the humiliation and heartbreak of his betrayal in silence. But not anymore. Now the tables had turned, and it was Aaron's turn to face the consequences of his actions. And this time, there would be no second chances, no empty promises or tearful apologies. This time, he was going to learn the true meaning of karma, and I was going to be the one to deliver it. The days following Ethan's revelation about Clara's embezzlement scheme were some of the most tense and emotionally charged of my life. As much as I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy around Aaron, the simmering fury and resentment I felt towards him made it nearly impossible. Every time I looked at him, I saw not the man I had once loved, but a pathetic fool who had been so blinded by his own selfish desires that he'd allowed himself to be used as a pawn in Clara's twisted game. The thought of it made my skin crawl. Still, I knew I had to keep my composure, at least for the time being. Ethan had assured me that the evidence he'd uncovered would be more than enough to bring Clara's crimes to light, but we needed to bide our time and let the authorities do their work. Of course, that didn't stop Clara herself from trying to worm her way out of the impending disaster. About a week after my meeting with Ethan, I received a frantic call from the little snake herself, practically begging me to meet with her in private. "Please, Marta," she pleaded, her voice thick with desperation. "I know you must hate me after everything that's happened, but I swear I never meant for things to go this far." I scoffed, barely able to contain my disgust. "Save it, Clara. I know all about your little embezzlement scheme and how you've been using my husband as your own personal patsy." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, and for a moment I thought she might try to deny the accusations. But then, in a small, defeated voice, she spoke again. "So that's what this is all about," she murmured. "I should have known Ethan would come crawling back to you eventually." I felt a surge of satisfaction at the realization that she knew the jig was up. "That's right, Clara. Your little game is over, and you're going to pay for what you've done, both to me and to Aaron." There was a pause, and then she let out a bitter laugh. "Aaron? Are you kidding me? That spineless worm was just as complicit in all of this as I was. He knew exactly what was going on, and he was more than happy to turn a blind eye as long as he got to keep sticking his pistache." "Watch your mouth," I snarled, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Aaron might be a lying, cheating scumbag, but he's still my husband. And trust me, he'll get what's coming to him too." Clara let out a derisive snort. "Yeah, right, like he'll ever face any real consequences for his actions. Men like him always seem to skate by, while the rest of us take the fall." I could hear the bitterness and resentment dripping from her words, and for a brief moment, I almost felt a twinge of pity for her. Almost. "Well, not this time," I said, my voice taking on a steely edge. "I'll make sure you both get exactly what you deserve, one way or another." There was a long pause, and then Clara spoke again. Her tone resigned. "Fine. Do whatever you have to do. Just let me know when and where you want to meet. I at least owe you that much." I smiled grimly to myself, already formulating a plan. "Don't worry, Clara. I'll be in touch, and when I do, you'd better be ready to face the consequences of your actions, once and for all." As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. The endgame was finally in sight, and soon both Clara and Aaron would learn the true meaning of karma, and I would be the one to deliver it. The weeks following Clara's arrest were a whirlwind of chaos and turmoil. As the sordid details of her embezzlement scheme came to light, the shockwaves reverberated through Aaron's company, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. At first, Aaron tried desperately to distance himself from the scandal, claiming ignorance and pleading his innocence. But as more evidence of his involvement surfaced, the illicit use of his access codes, the suspicious wire transfers, the damning paper trail that seemed to implicate him at every turn, it became increasingly clear that he was far from the unwitting victim he claimed to be. I watched from the sidelines as his once promising career went up in flames, his reputation dragged through the mud, and his professional life left in tatters. A part of me, the part that still clung to the memories of the man I had once loved, felt a twinge of sadness at seeing him brought so low. But that small flicker of sympathy was quickly extinguished by the knowledge of the depth of his betrayal, not just to me, but to the company he had sworn to serve faithfully. In the end, he had proven himself to be just as selfish and morally bankrupt as Clara, willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of his own twisted desires. As the dust began to settle and the legal proceedings against Clara moved forward, it became clear that Aaron would likely avoid any serious jail time, at least for the time being. The evidence of his direct involvement was simply too circumstantial, the prosecutors claimed, and without Clara's full cooperation, nailing him for aiding and abetting her crimes would be an uphill battle. I should have felt relieved, I suppose. After all, seeing the man I had once loved rot behind bars was never my intention. But as I watched him slink away from the courthouse, his head hung in shame, and his once bright future reduced to ashes, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hollow victory. Because as much as the authorities might have let him off easy, there was no escaping the fact that his life as he knew it was over. The lies, the betrayal, the utter disregard he had shown for me and our marriage, it had all caught up to him in the end. and now he would be forced to face the consequences for the rest of his days. A few weeks later, as I was packing up the last of my belongings in preparation for my move to a new city, a fresh start, far away from the painful memories of our life together, there was a tentative knock at the door. I already knew who it would be before I opened it. "Marta," Aaron said, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked haggard, his once handsome features etched with lines of shame and regret. I wanted to apologize one last time, for everything. I regarded him coolly, feeling nothing but a hollow emptiness where the love and affection I had once felt for this man had resided. "Your apologies mean nothing to me now, Aaron. You made your choices, and you'll have to live with the consequences." He nodded, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I know, and I deserve every bit of it after the way I treated you. He trailed off, shaking his head. "I hope that someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me." I let out a bitter laugh. "Forgive you? Aaron, you're lucky I didn't have you thrown in jail alongside that little tramp you were so eager to risk everything for." A flicker of pain crossed his features, but he didn't argue. We both knew I was right. "Just go, Aaron," I said, my voice heavy with finality. "Go and try to pick up the pieces of the life you've ruined. As for me, I'm done. Our time together is over, and I'm ready to start fresh." He opened his mouth as if to protest, but then seemed to think better of it. With one last lingering look, he turned and walked away, disappearing from my life for good. As I watched him go, I felt an unexpected sense of peace wash over me. The long, arduous road to revenge was finally at an end, and while the journey had been painful, the satisfaction of seeing karma served made it all worth it in the end. A new chapter was beginning, I realized, one free from the lies and betrayal that had haunted me for so long. And as I took one last look around the empty house that had once been our home, I couldn't help but smile. Revenge might be bittersweet, but it was exactly what I needed to reclaim my life and move forward, stronger and more resilient than ever before. "James, why did you sell my car without even asking me?" I stood in our brightly lit kitchen, gripping the edge of the countertop. James was lounging on the couch, phone in hand, barely looking up as I spoke. "Emma, I told you last week. We needed the money," James replied casually. His voice was indifferent, almost bored. "The money? For what?" My voice was rising, my patience wearing thin. "For the new entertainment system. You saw how outdated the old one was. We deserved an upgrade," James said with a shrug, his eyes glued to a video on his phone. "That car was important to me, James. It wasn't just about the money. It was mine." My voice cracked, and I took a deep breath, remembering my grandmother's advice to keep my inheritance secret. I never thought I'd need to follow it so strictly. James finally looked up, his expression a mix of irritation and nonchalance. "Come on, Emma, it's just a car. We can get you another one later." I shook my head, frustration boiling over. "You didn't even bother to ask me. This isn't just about the car, James. It's about respect and consideration. You can't just make decisions like this on your own." Our suburban home, usually a tranquil retreat, now felt stifling and alien. The neighborhood outside was quiet, with children playing in front yards and neighbors chatting over fences. To the outside world, we were just another happy couple in a tight-knit community. But inside, the cracks were growing deeper every day. James finally set his phone down and stood up, walking towards me. "Emma, you're overreacting. It's not like we're broke. I'll buy you another car. End of discussion." His dismissive tone cut through me like a knife. I looked at him, searching for the man I'd married, the man who had once been attentive and kind. But all I saw was a stranger, someone who was slowly bleeding me dry of patience and trust. "End of discussion?" I repeated, incredulous. "You can't just dictate how this goes, James. You've crossed a line, and you don't even see it." James's eyes narrowed. "What's really going on here, Emma? You've been acting distant for months. Is there something you're not telling me?" I took a step back, realization dawning. My grandmother's advice echoed in my mind. Now, more than ever, I understood why she had been so adamant. Protecting my inheritance wasn't about the money itself. It was about keeping control over something that was truly mine, especially when everything else seemed to be slipping away. "I don't know, James. Maybe it's because you've stopped caring about what's important to me," I said quietly. Or maybe it's because you think you can just bulldoze through this marriage, making decisions that suit only you. James scoffed, shaking his head. You're being dramatic. I'm just trying to improve our lives. Your life, I corrected. Improving your life at my expense. He didn't respond, just stared at me with a mixture of frustration and confusion. I realized then that he truly didn't see the problem, or maybe he didn't want to. Either way, it was clear that something had to change, and fast. As James turned back to his phone, dismissing the conversation, I felt a surge of determination. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I wasn't going to be sidelined in my own life. Grandma's wisdom was a guiding light, and it was time I started listening to it more carefully. Tension hung heavily in the air as I walked out of the kitchen, my heart pounding. One thing was certain. I wasn't going to let James's betrayal define me. This was only the beginning, and I had my own plans to make. Claire, I don't know what to do anymore, I said, dropping onto her couch. The floral print cushions smelled faintly of lilac. Claire looked up from her magazine, instantly concerned. Emma, what happened? Did James do something again? I sighed heavily, running my fingers through my hair. He sold my car without even asking me, just traded it for some stupid entertainment system. Claire's eyes widened in shock. Seriously? Who sells someone's car without asking? That's insane. Yes, and he acted like it wasn't a big deal, just brushed it off like I was overreacting. My voice wavered as I recounted the morning's confrontation. He's been doing this for a while now, hasn't he? Claire asked softly. I nodded. It didn't start this way. When we first got together, he was so kind, so attentive. I felt like I was the center of his universe. But now, I let the sentence hang, unfinished. Claire squeezed my hand reassuringly. Have you thought about leaving him? You don't have to stay in a situation like this, Emma. I bit my lip, hesitating. I have, but it's complicated. We've built a life together, and it's not easy to just walk away. Claire's face was etched with concern. You have to do what's best for you. Always remember that. Later that evening, as I cleaned up the dinner dishes James had left behind, I started thinking about the early days of our relationship. I remembered the picnics in the park, the surprise weekend getaways. He used to plan everything so meticulously, making sure every moment was special. But that James was long gone, replaced by someone who seemed to care more about his gadgets and parties than about me. While scrubbing the last of the pots, I noticed the flashy new entertainment system taking up half the living room. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. I grabbed my phone and started scrolling through James's social media. My heart sank when I saw the photos of his recent parties, extravagant and filled with friends I barely knew. Numerous gadgets cluttered our home, all bought with the money he got from selling my car. I fumed silently, deciding to confront him again when he came home. The door creaked open as James stumbled in, the smell of alcohol clinging to him. James, where have you been? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He laughed drunkenly. Out with the guys, needed a break, you know? I took a deep breath. I saw the photos, all those expensive gadgets and parties. Is that where the money from my car went? James looked at me, his eyes unfocused. Come on, Emma. Don't start with this again. It's just stuff. We're having fun. Fun without considering my feelings? I snapped. This is beyond disrespectful, James, that you're ignoring everything I care about. James rolled his eyes, slumping into the couch. Why don't you ever chill out? You used to be fun. Tears of frustration stung my eyes. This isn't about fun, James. It's about you taking everything I care about and tossing it aside. He didn't respond, eyes already closing as he passed out on the couch. The sound of his snoring filled the room, but it couldn't drown out the anger and hurt simmering in my chest. I stood there for a moment, looking at the man who once promised to cherish me. Claire's words echoed in my mind. Maybe it was time to make a change, to find the strength Grandma had always believed I had. This betrayal wasn't the end, it was just the beginning of something new, and I was ready to fight for the life I deserved. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, coffee untouched, phone in hand. I needed to talk to my parents. I dialed my mom's number and waited. Emma, sweetheart, how are you? My mom answered, her voice warm and comforting. Mom, things with James, they're worse than ever, I began, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh, honey, what happened? She asked, her tone immediately concerned. I quickly explained the car situation and James's ongoing disregard for my feelings. I'm considering divorce, Mom. I can't do this anymore. There was a pause on the line. Emma, we've always supported you, no matter what. Your father and I will help you through this. And remember, you have your inheritance. I know, Mom. I might need to use it to move out and start over, I admitted, feeling a small twinge of relief saying it out loud. We'll support you, darling. Do what you need to do, she assured me. As I ended the call, I felt a newfound sense of purpose. It was time to take action. I started drafting an email to a lawyer, seeking advice on the next steps for divorce and considering apartments in a nearby town. After a few hours, I felt more determined than ever. That evening, I kept my phone close, anticipating a reply from the lawyer. As I sat on the couch, James entered the room, eyes suspicious. What have you been doing all day? He asked, his tone accusatory. Just sorting some things out, I replied, keeping my answers vague. James eyed my phone. Who were you talking to earlier? Mom, I needed some advice, I said, avoiding his gaze. Before I knew it, James snatched my phone from my hand. What the hell, James? Give it back! I yelled, lunging after him. He scrolled through my messages, his face darkening. Thinking about leaving me, huh? His voice was laced with anger. Give me my phone, James, now. My voice was firm, even though my heart was pounding. James's eyes flashed dangerously. You think you can just run away with that little inheritance of yours? Everything should go to us, not just you. You've been hiding it all this time? My mind raced. I didn't have to tell you everything. That money was meant to give me security. You're gonna use it to get away from me? He spat, stepping closer. I stood my ground. Yes, James, if that's what it takes, I'm done. He threw the phone on the couch, stepping back, but his expression was still livid. You won't get far with that money. You owe me, Emma. We're in this together. We were in this together, James. You're the one who turned it into something else, I said coldly. James stared at me, seething, before storming out of the room, slamming the door behind him. My hands were shaking, but I felt a rush of determination. This couldn't go on any longer. I had my plan. I was going to make it out of this mess one way or another. The email dinged, signaling a new message from the lawyer. I quickly opened it and read through the advice, solidifying my resolve. It was time to take the next step. I packed a small bag with essentials, calling Claire to give her a heads up. She answered on the first ring. Claire, can I stay with you for a while? I'm leaving tonight. Emma, of course. Come right over. We'll figure this out together, Claire said, her voice unwavering. Grabbing my bag, I took one last look around the house that had become more a prison than a home. Then I walked out the door and didn't look back. I arrived at Claire's house, still gripping the small suitcase. Claire opened the door before I could knock, pulling me into a tight hug. You did the right thing, Emma, she whispered. Thanks, Claire, I replied, stepping inside. We sat down in her living room, the warm ambiance a stark contrast to the cold tension I'd left behind. So what's the plan? Claire asked, handing me a cup of tea. I contacted a lawyer. Tomorrow I'll start looking for a new place and a job. I need to be independent, both emotionally and financially, I explained, taking a sip. Claire nodded. You know you can stay here as long as you need to. We've got this. The next morning, I woke up early, ready to tackle my to-do list. Claire drove me around town, helping me check out apartments. We found a cozy one-bedroom that felt just right. I put down a deposit and scheduled a move-in date. Later, I sat at Claire's kitchen table, laptop open, applying for jobs. The task was tedious but necessary. It wasn't long before emails and phone calls started coming in. By evening, I had lined up several interviews. As I celebrated these small victories with Claire, my phone rang. It was James. My heart raced, but I answered. Emma, where are you? He demanded, his tone aggressive. That's none of your business, I said, trying to stay calm. It is my business. We're married. You can't just walk out, he barked. I had to. You left me no choice, I replied firmly. James scoffed. You think you're brave now, hiding at Claire's? This is our problem, not hers. Tell me where you are. I'm not hiding, and it's not just Claire's problem. I'm done being treated like I don't matter, I said, my voice steady. You owe me, Emma. For the mortgage, the bills, everything. You think you can just run off with your inheritance and leave me to deal with everything? His desperation was palpable. This isn't about money, James. It's about respect, or your lack of it. I said, tears filling my eyes. You'll regret this, Emma, he hissed before hanging up. I put the phone down, my hands shaking. Claire looked at me, concern etched on her face. He won't stop, will he? She said softly. Not easily, I admitted, steeling myself. The next few days flew by in a blur of apartment preparations and job interviews. I felt stronger each day, my resolve hardening. One evening, while I was organizing my new apartment, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from James. You're making a huge mistake. You'll come crawling back. They always do. I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I typed back quickly. No, James, I'm done crawling. This is my life now. I hit send and blocked his number. Standing by the window, I watched the sun setting over my new neighborhood, feeling a sense of freedom. The next morning, I went to my first job interview. Walking into the office, I was greeted by a friendly receptionist who led me through the process. The interview went well, and I left feeling hopeful. Returning to my new apartment, I found Claire waiting with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. To new beginnings, she toasted, handing me a glass. To new beginnings, I echoed, clinking glasses. As we sat and talked, I realized I was beginning to reclaim my life. Each step forward was a step away from James and his toxic influence. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about all I'd left behind and everything that lay ahead. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. A week later, I got the call offering me the job. I smiled, tears of joy streaming down my face. It was a sign that I was on the right path. I was building a new life, one step at a time, and it was a life where I mattered. The town's annual fair was in full swing. Kids sprinted between booths, their laughter mingling with the cheerful hum of the crowd. I was helping Claire set up her jewelry stall when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Emma, Jack's familiar voice greeted me. He was a mutual friend, someone dependable who'd always been kind. Oh, hey, Jack, how's it going? I asked, forcing a smile. Pretty good. But hey, I heard about you and James. Are you okay? Jack's concern was evident. I sighed. It's been rough, but I'm getting through it. Jack nodded, but his face turned cautious. Speaking of James, he's here. And, well, he isn't handling things well. Before I could ask what he meant, a loud commotion drew our attention. James was in the middle of the fairground, visibly intoxicated, shouting at a group of young men gathered around a barbecue pit. Oh no, I whispered, feeling my stomach knot. Hey, it's none of your business, James yelled, pushing one of the men. The crowd's murmur grew louder, eyes turning toward the spectacle. I took a deep breath. I need to handle this. Emma, are you sure? Claire asked, worry etched on her face. I have to, I replied, squaring my shoulders and weaving through the crowd. As I approached, James spotted me and stumbled over. Emma, there you are. Thought you could avoid me forever? He slurred, his breath reeking of alcohol. James, you're making a scene. Let's talk somewhere else, I urged, trying to stay calm. He laughed bitterly. Why? So you can walk out again? You think you're so much better now? James, you're drunk. This isn't the place, I said firmly. Everyone should know how you abandoned your husband. James shouted, his voice carrying over the crowd. I could feel the eyes of the townsfolk on us, the whispers spreading like wildfire. Anger and embarrassment churned inside me, but I wouldn't let him drag me back down. James, we're done. You need to accept that, I said, my voice steady. Now please, go home before you make this worse. Worse? You think this can get worse? His eyes were wild, unhinged. You owe me, Emma. You can't just walk away without paying your dues. I don't owe you anything, James. I'm done being your pawn. I replied, stepping back as he moved closer. A friend intervened, grabbing James by the arm. Come on, man. Let's get you out of here. James struggled, but was eventually pulled away, his furious eyes locked on mine. You're going to regret this, Emma. As he was dragged off, I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Claire appeared by my side, her hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? She asked gently. Yes, it had to be done, I said, my voice shaky but resolute. We continued setting up the stall, the mood around us slowly returning to normal. But I noticed several sympathetic looks from people who'd witnessed the altercation. Hours passed and the fair wore on, becoming a blur of faces and activities. That evening, after packing up, I drove to my new apartment. Walking in, I felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. I was finally free of James's constant manipulation, even if the road ahead was still uncertain. I spent the next few days settling in, gradually feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. One morning, I walked over to the mirror in my new bedroom and caught my reflection. There was a spark in my eyes, one that had been missing for a long time. This was my life, my space, and my chance to rebuild. The memory of James's public meltdown was still fresh, but it only fueled my resolve. I was moving forward, and nothing he did would pull me back. Stepping out into the crisp morning air, I felt a newfound sense of purpose. Today was just another step, and step by step I was reclaiming my future. One morning, a week after the fair, I was getting ready for my first day at the new job when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jack. "Emma, can we meet up? There's something you need to know about James." My curiosity piqued. I agreed to meet him at the local coffee shop after work. The day passed quickly, filled with training and meeting new colleagues. By evening, I felt both exhausted and exhilarated. At the coffee shop, Jack was already waiting with 2 drinks. He waved me over, his expression serious. "Thanks for coming, Emma," he said, sliding one of the cups over to me. "No problem, Jack. What's going on?" I asked, taking a sip. Jack took a deep breath. "James lost his job, the company downsized, and he was let go." I blinked in surprise. "I didn't know that. He hasn't contacted me since the fair." "Yeah, he's not taking it well," Jack continued. "He's been telling people you left him at the worst possible time, trying to play the victim, but there's more." I leaned in, my heart racing. "What do you mean?" "He's planning something, Emma. He told a mutual friend he's going to try to win you back so he can get his hands on your inheritance." Anger flared inside me. "He really thinks he can manipulate me again?" Jack nodded. "He's desperate, Emma. You need to be careful." "Thanks for the warning, Jack. I'll stay vigilant," I said, my resolve hardening. As I walked back to my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. James losing his job changed things, making him more unpredictable. I unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside, my mind racing. I needed to be prepared for whatever scheme he cooked up. The next few days were a whirlwind of work and settling into my new routine. One evening, as I was organizing my closet, there was a knock at the door. I hesitated, peering through the peephole. It was James. "Emma, open up. We need to talk," he called, his voice shaky. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door slightly, leaving the chain on. "What do you want, James?" He looked disheveled, clearly stressed. "Emma, I'm sorry for everything. I've lost my job. I need your help." "You need my help," I repeated, incredulous. "After everything you've done?" "Please, Emma, we can work this out. Think about what we had," he pleaded, trying to sound genuine. "What we had, James, is over. You made sure of that," I replied firmly. His demeanor shifted, his eyes flashing with anger. "You can't leave me like this. You owe me." "I owe you nothing," I said, slamming the door shut and locking it. I could hear James banging on the door, shouting, but I leaned against it, breathing deeply. After a few minutes, the banging stopped, and I heard him leave. I checked the peephole to make sure he was gone before calling Claire. "Emma, what's wrong?" she asked, hearing the panic in my voice. James showed up at my apartment. "He's acting desperate and unhinged," I explained. "Stay calm, Emma. You need to protect yourself." "Consider getting a restraining order," Claire suggested. "I'll look into it." "Thanks, Claire," I said, feeling a bit more anchored after talking to her. The next morning, I called the lawyer to discuss my options. He advised me to document everything and start the process for a restraining order. I followed his advice, keeping a log of every interaction with James. Days turned into weeks, and I focused on building my new life. One afternoon, while taking a break at work, I saw a familiar face across the street. It was James, watching me. My heart pounded, but I straightened my shoulders and continued with my day. This was my life now, my chance to be free. No matter how desperate James became, I wasn't going back. This was about reclaiming my future, and I was determined not to let him take that away from me. The moment I stepped out of my building, I saw James sitting on a bench across the street. His eyes locked onto mine, and he stood up, walking towards me. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered under my breath. I quickened my pace, determined not to engage with him, but he caught up to me before I could reach the corner. "Emma, wait," James called out, reaching for my arm. I yanked my arm away, anger flaring. "What do you want, James? I've told you it's over." "Just hear me out," he pleaded, desperation clear in his voice. I've been trying to get back on my feet, but it's been hard without you. We can make this work again. I stared at him, incredulous. You really think I'd come back after everything? You manipulated, lied, and used me. There's nothing left to fix. James looked around, a flicker of anger passing over his face. We were married, Emma. That means working through the tough times. I did work through the tough times, James, alone, while you partied and spent money you didn't have. I shot back, feeling a rush of righteous indignation. A passerby slowed down, eyes widening at the commotion, but I stood my ground. The whole world might as well know what I've been through. James's posture shifted from pleading to confrontational. You want people to think I'm the bad guy? You've been hiding money, living this new life while I'm struggling. Living this new life isn't easy, but it's necessary, I said, trying to keep calm. I need peace, James, something you can't seem to offer. His eyes darkened. You think you're better than me now? No, James. I think I deserve better than how you treated me, I replied, turning to walk away. James grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around. This isn't over, Emma. You're not getting rid of me that easily. Get your hands off me, I yelled, drawing the attention of more bystanders. James's grip loosened, but the venom in his eyes remained. A tall man in a suit stepped forward. Is everything all right here? He asked, eyeing James warily. Yes, thank you, I answered quickly. I was just leaving. James glared at the man, but took a step back. This isn't over, he repeated, his voice low and threatening. Ignoring his parting words, I hurried away, my heart pounding. This encounter couldn't scare me into submission. It only made me more resolute. Back at my apartment, I immediately called my lawyer. James is stalking me. I need to escalate this. What are my options? We can file for a restraining order immediately, he replied. Document today's incident in detail and we'll proceed. Hours later, while I completed the necessary paperwork, a sense of empowerment washed over me. Finally, action was being taken to protect my newfound peace. The next week passed without incident until I received a call from an unknown number. My heart sank when I heard his voice again. Emma, you think a piece of paper will keep me away? You have no idea what I'm capable of, James hissed before the line went dead. Trembling with a mix of fear and fury, I called the police and reported the threat, adding it to the growing case against him. This pattern of intimidation and control would end here. A day later, Claire called me with surprising news. Emma, people are talking. They know about James's behavior. He's losing friends and support left and right. Good, I said, feeling a sense of vindication. He's finally getting what he deserves. As I hung up, I felt an unexpected wave of relief. James's grip on my life was weakening. The community was seeing his true colors, just as I had. I stood by the window, looking out at the bustling evening street below. My journey towards freedom was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I felt hope. James's fall from grace had begun, and I was reclaiming my future one step at a time. Weeks had passed, and life was slowly returning to a semblance of normal. I was flourishing at my new job, finding satisfaction in the work and camaraderie with my colleagues. Evenings were filled with laughter and support from Claire, who had become my rock. One afternoon I was engrossed in crafting a presentation when my phone buzzed. It was from Jack. Hey Emma, are you free to meet for coffee later? Something you should know. My curiosity piqued, I agreed. We met at the little cafe by my office. Jack was already there, looking concerned. Emma, thanks for meeting me, he greeted, gesturing to the seat across from him. No problem, Jack. What's going on? I asked, sitting down. It's about James. He's not doing well. He's been trying to get people to turn against you, but it's backfiring. People see him for what he is now, Jack explained. Relief washed over me. Good, he needs to face the consequences. But there's more. James got into some trouble with the law. Drunk driving. He's lost even more support, Jack continued. I nodded, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and pity. Thanks for telling me, Jack. I needed to hear that. After our coffee, I decided to take a walk through the park. The cool breeze and the rustling of leaves felt liberating. It was here I bumped into James, looking disheveled and defeated. He didn't see me at first, but when he did, his eyes darkened. Well, look who it is, he said, his voice dripping with bitterness. James, please. I don't want any trouble, I replied, keeping my distance. You've ruined everything for me, Emma. You and your lies, he spat, his face contorting with anger. Lies, James. The only person who ruined your life is you. Your actions have consequences, I retorted. He took a shaky step closer. Consequences? I've lost everything. My respect, friends, all because of you. I stood my ground. No, James, it's because of your choices. I simply refuse to be your victim anymore. His expression wavered, a flicker of desperation in his eyes. You think you're free of me? This isn't over. Before he could say anything more, 2 police officers approached. Mr. Miller? One of them asked. James turned, his bravado melting away. Yes? You're under arrest for violating the restraining order. You were warned to stay away from Ms. Miller, the officer said, pulling out handcuffs. James's face turned pale. Emma, you can stop this. Tell them it's a mistake, he pleaded, panic in his voice. I shook my head. No, James, this ends now. The officers led him away, and I stood there, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. It was truly over. Returning to my apartment that evening, I found a letter in the mail. Opening it, I discovered I had been approved for a higher position at work, a promotion. It felt like the universe was giving me a sign that I was on the right path. I called Claire to share the good news, and she was ecstatic. We celebrated with a small dinner at my place, toasting to new beginnings and the end of a dark chapter. That night, I took a moment to reflect on my journey. From the betrayal that shattered my world to the steps I took to rebuild it. I had found strength I didn't know I possessed and had reclaimed my life, piece by piece. Walking through the bustling streets the next day, I felt lighter. The weight of past traumas was lifting, replaced by a sense of empowerment and hope. I deserved this new life. A life where my worth was not dictated by someone else's whims. As I turned a corner, I caught a glimpse of someone familiar. James, disheveled and on the edge, standing outside a convenience store, clearly struggling. Our eyes briefly met, but there was no connection left. I walked on, a silent resolve in my heart. James's downfall was complete. My future, bright and full of possibilities, was just beginning, and I was ready to embrace it, one step at a time. Seriously, this is what you cooked for my promotion? Brian's harsh words sliced through the air, shattering the joyful mood that had filled our dining room moments earlier. I stared at him in disbelief, my heart sinking as his eyes narrowed with disgust at the meal I had spent hours preparing, his favorite, creamy mushroom risotto. The kids froze, their forks halfway to their mouths, sensing the sudden shift in their father's demeanor. Brian, what's wrong? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I thought you loved this dish. He scoffed, pushing his plate away. Loved it? This tastes like cardboard. How hard is it to follow a simple recipe? Jake's lip began to quiver, and Zoe's eyes welled up with tears. I reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on each of their arms. Daddy's just joking around, I lied, forcing a smile. Why don't we all take a break and come back to our food when it's cooled down a bit? Brian shot me a contemptuous glare, but I refused to meet his gaze, focusing instead on comforting our children. As they scampered off to play, I turned to my husband, my heart pounding. What's gotten into you? I hissed, keeping my voice low. You're scaring the kids. He leaned back in his chair, a smug grin spreading across his face. I'm just being honest, Ellie. If you can't handle the truth, that's your problem. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died on my lips. This wasn't the caring, supportive man I had married. The one who had celebrated every minor accomplishment in our lives, who had doted on our children and made them feel like the center of the universe. As I watched him rise from the table and stride out of the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted irrevocably within our family. And for the first time, I found myself questioning the man I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. Over the next few days, Brian's behavior only grew more erratic and disturbing. The man I had once admired for his gentle strength and unwavering devotion to our family had been replaced by a sneering, cold-hearted stranger. Listen up, you little brats, he barked at Jake and Zoe one morning as they dawdled over their breakfast. When I tell you to do something, you do it. No questions asked, understand? The kids nodded meekly, their eyes wide with fear. I stepped in, my heart racing. Brian, that's enough, I said firmly. They're just children. There's no need to speak to them that way. He turned his icy glare on me. And you, he spat. Don't think I haven't noticed the way you've been coddling them, undermining my authority. It stops now." I recoiled, stunned by the venom in his voice. Before I could respond, he stormed out of the house, leaving us all shell-shocked in his wake. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, I called my Uncle Tom, desperate for advice. "He's like a different person," I sobbed into the phone. "I don't know what's happening to him, but it's scaring me, Tom, and the kids are terrified." Uncle Tom's voice was gentle but firm. "You need to get out of there, Ellie. At least for a little while, until we can figure out what's going on with Brian. Stay with your parents, or come to my place. Just get yourself and the kids to safety." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "I can't just leave," I protested. "He's my husband, the father of my children. I have to try to help him, to get through to him." "Ellie?" Uncle Tom sighed heavily. "Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who can hurt us the deepest. Promise me you'll at least consider getting out for a while, okay? For the kids' sake, if nothing else." I promised, but deep down I knew I wouldn't leave. Not yet. I had to believe that the man I loved was still in there somewhere, buried beneath this new, twisted persona. And I was determined to find him, no matter what it took. I knew I had to get to the bottom of Brian's disturbing transformation, no matter how painful the truth might be. Late one night, after he had stormed off to bed, I crept downstairs, my heart pounding in my chest. From the living room, I could hear the faint murmur of his voice, punctuated by occasional bursts of hushed laughter. Straining to listen, I made out the words "Megan" and "can't wait to see you again." A wave of nausea washed over me as the realization hit. My husband was having an affair. I pressed my ear closer to the door, tears stinging my eyes as Brian's sickly sweet endearments floated out to me. "You're the only one who understands me, Megan, the only one who makes me feel alive." White-hot anger surged through me, momentarily overshadowing the hurt and betrayal. How dare he? How dare he throw away everything we'd built together, our family, our vows, for some cheap fling? I burst through the door, my hands balled into fists at my sides. "So that's it, then?" I spat, my voice shaking with rage. "You're just going to toss me and the kids aside for some young thing at work?" Brian whirled around, his face flushing crimson as he scrambled to end the call. "Ellie, it's not what you think." "Don't lie to me," I screamed, all pretense of composure abandoned. "I heard everything, you miserable bastard. How could you do this to us?" He narrowed his eyes, his lips curling into a sneer. "Don't act so innocent, Ellie. You've been smothering me for years, treating me like a child instead of a man. Megan understands me, respects me. She's not some nagging shrew like you." The words stung like a physical blow, but I refused to back down. "You're a coward, Brian. A selfish, spineless coward. And if you think for 1 second that I'm going to stand by and let you destroy this family, you're sadly mistaken." He laughed then, a harsh, grating sound that chilled me to the bone. "Oh, really? And what are you going to do about it, huh? Leave me? Go ahead, be my guest. But just remember, without me, you and those brats are nothing." In that moment, as I stared into the cold, dead eyes of the man I had once loved more than life itself, I knew our marriage was over. The only question was, how far was I willing to go to protect my children from the monster their father had become? After my confrontation with Brian, I knew I had to get out. But where could I go? With no job and no savings of my own, I was completely dependent on him financially. That's when I remembered my parents' offer to let me stay with them if things ever got bad. At the time, I had brushed it off, certain that Brian and I were solid. But now, I dialed their number with trembling fingers, praying they would answer. Mom picked up on the third ring. "Ellie? Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Her voice was laced with concern. I took a deep, shuddering breath. "Mom, I need your help. Brian, he's..." The words stuck in my throat as a fresh wave of tears spilled down my cheeks. "Say no more," she said firmly. "Your father and I will be there first thing in the morning to get you and the kids out of there. You just focus on packing a bag, okay?" Relief washed over me, closely followed by a pang of guilt. "But Mom, I can't just show up on your doorstep with no warning. What about..." "Don't you dare finish that sentence, Ellie Scott," she cut me off. "You are my daughter, and those babies are my grandchildren. There is nothing in this world more important than keeping you all safe. Do you understand me?" I nodded weakly, fresh tears blurring my vision. "Thank you," I whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you guys." The next morning, as promised, my parents arrived just after sunrise. Brian had already left for work, thank God. I didn't think I could face him again, not after last night. Dad pulled me into a fierce hug as soon as I opened the door. "It's going to be okay, sweetie," he murmured, stroking my hair. "We're going to get through this, I promise." With their help, we packed up what little we could and left that house behind, at least for the time being. As we drove away, the kids clutching their favorite stuffed animals in the back seat, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness for the life I thought we'd had. But that life, I realized, had been a lie, and it was time to start over, no matter how hard it might be. My first call once we were settled at my parents' place was to my Aunt Linda, who worked as a realtor. If I was going to build a new life for me and my kids, I needed my own place. "Don't you worry about a thing, honey," she assured me when I explained the situation. "I'll find you the perfect little nest egg, you'll see. Just focus on those babies for now." True to her word, within a week, Linda had lined up a cozy, 2-bedroom apartment in a good school district. It wasn't much, but it was ours, a safe haven, free from Brian's toxic influence. As I signed the lease, finally feeling like I could breathe again, I made a silent vow. From now on, protecting my children would be my top priority. No matter what it took, I would make sure they never had to experience the fear and pain their father had inflicted on our family. If exposing Brian's true nature to the world was the only way to keep them safe, then so be it. The gloves were off. The move into our new apartment was bittersweet. On one hand, I was relieved to finally have a safe space for me and the kids, away from Brian's toxic presence. But it also meant accepting that my marriage was truly over, and that hurt in a way I could never have prepared for. As the movers unloaded the last of our meager belongings, I surveyed the empty living room with a heavy heart. So many dreams, so many hopes for our future, all gone up in smoke because of one man's selfish actions. "Mommy?" Jake's small voice broke through my reverie. "Is Daddy coming to live with us here too?" I knelt down and pulled him into a tight embrace, fighting back tears. "No, baby. Daddy, he's going to stay at our old house for a little while." Zoe toddled over, her brow furrowed in confusion. "But why? Doesn't Daddy love us anymore?" "Of course he does, sweetie," I lied through my teeth. At this point, I wasn't even sure Brian was capable of love. Sometimes grown-ups just need a little break from each other, that's all. The kids seemed to accept my explanation for now, but I knew that as they grew older, more questions would inevitably come, and I dreaded the day when I'd have to tell them the full, ugly truth about their father. In the days that followed, I threw myself into making our new place a home, determined to create a safe haven for my little family. But I also knew I couldn't hide from Brian forever. Sooner or later, we'd have to face each other again. That day came about a week after we moved in. I was unloading groceries when I heard a familiar laugh drifting through the parking lot. I froze, my heart pounding, as 2 figures rounded the corner. Brian, with his arm slung casually around the waist of a young, pretty blonde. Megan, the woman he'd betrayed me for. Before I could turn and leave, she spotted me, her eyes going wide with surprise, and was that fear? Brian, oblivious, merely grinned wolfishly. Well, well, if it isn't my darling wife," he sneered. "Quite the little love nest you've made for yourself here, Ellie." I opened my mouth to respond, but Megan beat me to it. "Please, Brian, don't start anything," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "We were just heading out." He shrugged her off roughly. "Don't be rude, Megan. Can't you see Ellie and I have some catching up to do?" The smug look on his face made me want to vomit. But then I noticed the way Megan flinched at his harsh tone, and a tiny spark of realization flickered to life. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the villain in this story after all. "Actually, Brian, I think Megan's right," I said coolly. "You two run along and have fun. I've got better things to do with my time than trade insults with a lying snake like you." His eyes narrowed dangerously, but I held my ground. With a disdainful snort, he turned on his heel and stormed off, leaving Megan standing there looking utterly lost. On impulse, I reached out and touched her arm gently. "Are you okay?" She startled, then gave a small, sad shake of her head. No, I'm really not." In that moment, I made a decision, one that would change both our lives forever. "Why don't you come inside?" I offered. "I think you and I need to have a little talk." Over the next few weeks, Megan and I formed an unlikely alliance, bound together by our shared experience of Brian's cruelty. As she opened up about the harassment and manipulation she'd endured at his hands, both at work and in their twisted relationship, a plan began to take shape in my mind. It was time to expose Brian for the monster he truly was, not just to me and Megan, but to the entire world. "Are you sure about this, Ellie?" Megan asked one afternoon as we pored over the evidence I'd painstakingly collected. Photos, emails, even a secret recording of one of Brian's vile, threatening phone calls. "If we go through with this, there's no going back." I squared my jaw, my hands trembling only slightly as I looked her in the eye. "I'm sure. He needs to be stopped, Megan. For your sake. For mine. For the kids. Who knows how many other lives he's destroyed with his lies and his abuse?" She nodded slowly, her expression hardening with resolve. "Okay, then. Let's do this." The next morning, I marched into the supermarket where Brian worked, the weight of the manila envelope in my hands grounding me like an anchor. I asked to speak with the store manager, my heart pounding in my chest. Brian's smug face fell the second he saw me stride through the door, Megan at my side. "You," he growled, rising from his seat. "What the hell is going on here?" "That's what I'd like to know, Mr. Jeffries," the manager interjected coolly. He fixed Brian with a steely glare. "These ladies have brought some disturbing allegations to my attention. Care to explain yourself?" For a moment, Brian looked almost comically flustered, his mouth working soundlessly. Then the mask slipped back into place, that cold, dead-eyed sneer I knew all too well. "I don't know what lies these two psychos have been feeding you," he spat. "But I can promise you, it's all a bunch of crazy, vindictive nonsense. This one," he jabbed a finger at me, "has had it out for me ever since I left her pathetic ass." White-hot rage licked at my insides, but I forced myself to remain calm, turning to the manager with an eerie sense of tranquility. "With all due respect, sir, I think the evidence speaks for itself." I handed him the file, watching impassively as he flipped through the contents, the photos of Megan's bruises, the recordings of Brian's threatening calls, the statements from other employees corroborating his pattern of intimidation and harassment. The manager's face drained of color as he digested it all. When he finally looked up at Brian again, there was a new hardness in his eyes and more than a hint of disgust. "Get out," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Get out of my store and don't even think about coming back. We'll be launching a full investigation in incidents, but I can promise you, your career here is over." For once, Brian seemed to have no snide comeback, no smarmy deflection. He simply stared at me, anger and hatred burning in his eyes. In that moment, I knew he saw me for what I truly was, not a meek, helpless victim, but a force to be reckoned with. Someone who would stop at nothing to protect herself and those she loved. As security escorted him from the building, I felt Megan's hand slip into mine, giving it a gentle, grateful squeeze. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes shining with a mixture of relief and triumph. "You saved me, Ellie. You saved us both." And in that moment I knew that no matter what lay ahead, it would all be worth it. Because this time, finally, the price for Brian's cruelty was one he wouldn't just be able to walk away from. Brian's downfall was swift and brutal after our explosive confrontation at the supermarket. Within days, news of his suspension and the impending investigation had spread like wildfire, both among his former colleagues and throughout our small community. At first, he tried to downplay it all, putting on that same smarmy, arrogant front he'd perfected over the years. "It's all just a misunderstanding," he insisted whenever someone dared to ask about the rumors. "Those vengeful witches are trying to ruin me, but they don't have a shred of proof." Oh, how wrong he was. With Megan's brave testimony and the mountain of evidence we'd compiled, the investigation quickly uncovered a sordid pattern of abuse and harassment stretching back years. Employee after employee came forward, emboldened by our actions, to share their own horror stories about Brian's cruel, bullying behavior. Even some of his buddies from the loading dock, the same ones who used to laugh and high-five him in the break room, turned against him when confronted with the ugly truth. "I always knew Jeffries was a bit of an ass," one former friend confided to me with a shamefaced look. "But I never imagined he was capable of the stuff you exposed. It's like he was living this whole secret, twisted life none of us ever saw." As the evidence mounted, the supermarket chain had no choice but to terminate Brian's employment, effective immediately, ensuring he would never be hired by any of their stores again. But that was just the start of his very public humiliation. It turned out Megan's father was a senior executive at the company's national headquarters. When he learned the full extent of how his beloved only daughter had been mistreated and manipulated by her manager, he was apoplectic with rage. Megan begged him not to get involved, worried it would seem like she was using her family connections unfairly. But her father was having none of it. "That depraved monster took advantage of my little girl," he growled, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. "He's going to pay for what he did, Megan. I'll make damn sure of it." True to his word, within a matter of days, Brian's name and photo were circulated on an internal corporate watch list, complete with a stern warning about his history of abusive behavior. No matter where he applied, every potential employer would see that scarlet letter blazoned across his file. His once bright career prospects had been torched, going up in flames, alongside the shattered remains of his ego. Everywhere he went, Brian was met with scornful looks and whispers from those who now saw him for the manipulative, vindictive snake he truly was. At one point, he even tried slithering back to me, his tail tucked between his legs, begging for a second chance. "Ellie, please," he whimpered, his eyes wet with self-pitiers. "I'm a broken man. You've taken everything from me. My job, my reputation, my whole life. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive me? For the kid's sake?" I'll never forget the look of pure, unadulterated disgust that twisted my features as I stared him down, revulsion roiling in the pit of my stomach. "Forgive you?" I spat, my voice dripping with contempt. "After what you put me through? After how you terrorized and abused all those innocent people just to feed your massive ego?" I leaned in until our faces were just inches apart, holding his pathetic gaze hostage with my own. "Not a chance in hell, Brian. Now get out of my sight before I have you arrested for trespassing. You're nothing to me anymore. Nothing but a cautionary tale, a living embodiment of karma." As he slunk away, shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt a profound sense of catharsis wash over me. The demon that had nearly destroyed my family was finally exorcised, vanquished by the light of truth and justice. It was over. I'd won. And deep down, I knew my new life, our new life, was just beginning. With Brian finally out of our lives for good, an incredible weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could breathe freely again without the constant fear and anxiety that had plagued me during those dark days of his emotional abuse. Of course, life as a newly single mother came with its own unique set of challenges. There were days when the stress and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me entirely. But thankfully, I had an amazing support system in the form of my parents, aunt and uncle to help pick up the slack. "You just focus on those babies, sweetie," Mom would insist whenever I tried to protest their generosity. "Let us old folks worry about the rest," and worry they did. From driving the kids to dance classes and soccer practice, to stocking my fridge with home-cooked meals, to simply being there to lend an ear whenever I needed to vent my frustrations. Their love and unwavering support was the balm that soothed my wounded soul. In time, a new sense of normalcy began to take root in our little household. The kids blossomed under the safety and stability of our fresh start, quickly putting the trauma of their father's actions behind them with the beautiful resilience that only children can possess. As for me, I found strength and purpose in throwing myself into my work at the consulting firm and being the best mother I could possibly be. Uncle Tom was thrilled to give me more responsibility, praising my ability to keep a cool head under pressure, a quality he joked must have been forged in the fires of my recent ordeal. "I always knew you were one tough cookie, Ellie girl," he'd say with a wink and that signature twinkle in his eye. "But after seeing you take down that low-life ex of yours, sheesh, I'm just glad I was never on your bad side." We'd share a laugh, but underneath the joviality was a profound sense of pride. In myself, in how far I'd come, in the life I was building from the ashes of my shattered dreams. The months rolled by, and soon it had been over a year since I'd last laid eyes on Brian's wretched face. I hoped he was suffering, wherever he'd slithered off to, that the consequences of his cruel, selfish actions weighed on him every single day. As for me and my little tribe, we were positively thriving. There was a lightness to our days now, an infectious joy that came from being truly, blissfully free from his toxic presence. My biggest worries were making sure the kids got to their activities on time and that I'd remembered to stock up on their favorite snacks. Simple, wonderful little things that I'd once taken for granted, before my life was turned upside down. Sitting on the couch one evening, watching Jake and Zoe playfully squabble over the TV remote, I felt an overwhelming surge of love and gratitude wash over me. These two incredible little humans, their bright smiles and raucous laughter filling our cozy living room, was my reason for enduring the darkness, for pressing on even when it felt impossible, for standing my ground and refusing to let a vile, manipulative bully rob me of the life I deserved. As my gaze drifted over the framed photos lining the walls, candid snapshots of birthday parties and family vacations, reminders of the joy that had once dominated our household, a serene sense of peace settled over me. Brian was a ghost, a distant and increasingly faded memory from a past life. This right here and now was my present, my future. And as long as I had these two amazing kids by my side, come what may, I knew we would be just fine.